Chapter 3 Fierce Beast Essence Blood, Body Forging Method. Acquired Purple Lightning Sable Beast Essence Blood. Ferocious Beast Essence Blood. Seeing this, Chu Mo's eyes immediately stared. When martial artists cultivated, in addition to the body forging method that everyone mastered to absorb yuan qi, there were still other auxiliary means. Fierce beast blood was one of them. The blood of ferocious beasts contained powerful energy. If one was able to take the blood of ferocious beasts when practicing the body forging method, one would be able to accelerate the speed of the body's refining. On the other hand, ferocious beast blood was the cohesion of the essence of a ferocious beast. Its effect was far more powerful than the ferocious beast blood. However, it is not easy to condense the blood of the beasts, and only a great master of martial arts can perform it. Therefore, the appearance of each beast's blood will cause a looting. Through the original owner's memories, he learned that the Luoyang base where he was now located had a level 3 fierce beast essence blood 3 months ago, which had caused the entire base to shake. Almost all of the big clans bid for it, and it ended up fetching an astronomical amount. It caused a hot debate. And now, such a treasure was in Chu Mo's hands. It was true that the ferocious beast essence blood he had in his hands was only the most lowly grade 1 ferocious beast essence blood, but it was the most suitable for the current him. It's not a small harvest. Chu Mo found a bottle and filled it up. Then he was filled with anticipation and intended to continue collecting. But right at this moment, he realized that the gathering technique actually had no effect. The target's resources are depleted and cannot be collected. At the same time, some information surfaced in his mind. It was about how to use the gathering technique. The gathering technique could only be used on dead corpses, whether they were human corpses or corpses of ferocious beasts. The types of corpses that could be collected were also varied. From the martial skills, talents, physique and even essence blood that the corpse possessed before it was born, there were all chances to get them. For each selected target, there is no limit to the number of times it can be collected until it is completely collected. If one wanted to change the target, a 1-month cooldown time would be required. So that's how it is. Understanding this, Chu Mo completely put his heart down. At this time, he felt a bit hungry, so he casually took some ingredients and prepared to go to the kitchen to cook. Inside the room, Chen Shiwei was performing one strange movement after another. However, this kind of movement was the best body forging method that had been condensed by the powerful martial artists of all mankind, after trying over and over again. There were 21 movements in total. As long as all of them were performed, it would cause the body to absorb the external heaven and earth vital energy, thus achieving the effect of quenching the body. Very quickly, Chen Shiwei finished performing a set of body forging techniques. Feeling the surging qi and blood in her body, she couldn't help but sigh. I'm still not strong enough. With just this kind of strength, it's simply impossible to hunt the double-headed python in the next academy roundup. The double-headed python was a grade 2 medium ferocious beast. Only a martial artist could match it. The reason why Chen Shiwei wanted to hunt it was because she had heard that the snake gall of the twin-headed python had the effect of enhancing the physique. She wanted to bring it to Chu Mo to swallow in order to improve his physique. Otherwise, if this continued, Chu Mo would be expelled from the academy. Thinking like this, Chen Shiwei couldn't help but secretly clench her fists at this time. The sky was already dark. Chen Shiwei temporarily put down the heaviness in her heart and planned to go cook. Chu Mo had completely given up on herself because of her parents' deaths, coupled with the fact that she hadn't detected any cultivation talent. Therefore, after she moved here, she was the one who went to cook and take care of Chu Mo every day. However, the other party did not appreciate it. When she thought of Chu Mo's ice-cold attitude towards her every time, Chen Shiwei sighed once again. Walking out of the room, Chen Shiwei, who was preparing to cook, suddenly smelled a fresh fragrance of rice. Walking to the living room, however, she saw that the table was already filled with food. The colors and flavors were all there, causing her to not be able to help but eat a little. Came out? Quickly wash your hands and sit down, prepare to eat the last soup, it's ready right away. Inside the open kitchen, Chu Mo heard the commotion and turned around. This scene. Let the temperament of the cool Chen Shiwei, a touch of consternation surfaced on his face. Did you make these? After hesitating for a moment, she still opened her mouth and inquired. Who else could it be if not me? Chu Mo smiled. As he spoke, he served the finished soup in a bowl and then brought it to the table. Start. Chu Mo greeted. Chen Shiwei's face was complicated as she looked at Chu Mo, who was serving the rice. There were some thousand words that kept rolling around inside. Silently sitting on the table, she watched as Chu Mo placed the finished rice in front of her. Ben had the intention to say something, but opened his mouth, and in the end did not say anything. Silently eating. Both people did not speak. In the entire living room, there was silence. A few moments later, Chu Mo put down his bowl. I've eaten well, wait for the bowl for you to wash. After saying that, he directly walked towards his house. Chen Shiwei, on the other hand, was full of surprise as she watched Chu Mo leave, until he walked into the house and closed the door. The words she wanted to say in her heart did not come out. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. For 2 years, Chu Mo had always been immersed in his own world, and no matter what she did, she wouldn't admit to it. And making a meal like the one at hand was something that was never seen before. It's really like a dream, she murmured, turning back to her head. Looking at the table in front of the table full of meals, on the cool and delicate face, a touch of faintly undetectable movement steeply surfaced. But I'd rather not wake up for the rest of my life. Inside the house, Chu Mo let out a sigh of relief. He knew that he would cause Chen Shiwei to have doubts if he did this. However, he did not have the idea of explaining. 3 feet of ice was not cold in a day. The original owner had continuously broken Chen Shiwei's heart over the past 2 years, and he was afraid that the other party was on the verge of despair. There was no point in explaining it this time. The only thing to do was to take practical action and make a change of one's own. Of course, the most important thing is still to improve one's strength. Abandoning all distractions, Chu Mo took a deep breath, took out the purple lightning sable ferocious beast essence blood, and drank it in one gulp. The next moment, a violent and majestic power immediately escaped within his body. Without hesitation, Chu Mo directly executed the body forging technique, absorbing the energy contained in the essence blood and quenching his body. 1 month later. Bang! Chu Mo utilized the power of lightning, then violently hammered his fist on the strength testing machine. The latter instantly shook violently, then displayed a clear number. 2,134 pounds. Not bad. Seeing this number, Chu Mo nodded his head in satisfaction. In this month, apart from eating and sleeping, Chu Mo had been diligently practicing hard. Although the inferior lightning attribute cultivation talent was very strong, but he also understood. Above the inferior cultivation talent, there were higher cultivation talents. And those heavenly prides who possessed these talents had a rate of progress that was far beyond his imagination. Therefore, he could only keep working hard and harder. A month of diligent exercise, coupled with the addition of the grade 1 purple lightning sable ferocious beast essence blood, caused him to grow more than 600 pounds of strength in just a month's time. If he were to transport the power of lightning, it would even double, thus breaking through the 4,000 kilograms mark. Without a doubt, such a growth rate was extremely pleasing. In fact, according to reason, Chu Mo's strength growth rate shouldn't be this fast. The reason why it was so was because of the ferocious beast's essence blood. The purple lightning ferret's essence blood alone had brought Chu Mo at least 400 pounds of strength increase. If there's a constant supply of ferocious beast essence blood, I'll be enough to ensure that I step into the martial artist realm within half a year. Chu Mo murmured softly, counting the days. Exactly 1 month had passed and a second collection could be carried out. So Chu Mo rested, took a bath, and planned to go out and hit the streets. This time, he was going to go outside and select a better gathering target, allowing his strength to grow even more rapidly. Chapter 4, Tier 3 Fierce Beast Earth Dragon Beast, Medium Cultivation Physique. Street. People were coming and going, it was very lively. Among the passing pedestrians, apart from most of the ordinary people, there were very few martial artists who exuded a powerful aura. Chu Mo's footsteps did not stop, and he soon arrived in a commercial street. Lower grade 1 Fierce Beast Earth Devouring Insect, there's still one last one left. Grade 1 Upper Class Ferocious Beast Wind Chasing Wolf, only 3 million. Bronze Grade Martial Skill, sold cheap. The shouts of the vendors on both sides of the street clamored into the ears. Ever since the great change of heaven and earth, mankind had relied on martial artists to establish their bases, making them the mainstay of society, which had spawned many industries related to martial arts. Such as in the commercial streets, the items sold were all related to ferocious beasts. Walking along the way, Chu Mo's eyes kept scanning the corpses of the ferocious beasts sold by the surrounding vendors, but unfortunately, most of them were grade 1 ferocious beasts. The best one was only a second-grade inferior ferocious beast. It was equivalent to the strength of an early-stage martial artist. His gathering technique could only select one target a month, and this time, his aim was to acquire a higher-level talent or physique to strengthen his cultivation speed. Therefore, he had to try to select the corpses of ferocious beasts with great strength. Although being powerful didn't mean that the talent or physique was powerful, at the very least it would have a much higher chance of a good talent appearing than a weak ferocious beast. After walking around, Chu Mo didn't see any more powerful ferocious beast corpses. This made him somewhat regretful. He was going to retreat and choose that second-level ferocious beast, but just at this moment, an alarming voice suddenly came from not far away. The Wind Chaser Hunter Squad is back. They've killed a powerful grade 3 fierce beast. I don't know who let out a cry of alarm, but in an instant, the entire street erupted in an uproar. Wind Chaser Hunter Squad? It actually killed a grade 3 fierce beast. This is not rare, Goover, to take a look. For a while, many people went over with the intention of crowding around and taking a look at the Wind Chaser Squad and the level 3 ferocious beast they had killed. On the street, Chu Mo was also stunned when he heard this. He had also heard of the reputation of the Wind Chaser Hunter Slayer Squad. It was a very powerful squad in Luoyang Base. The captain was named Wind Chaser, and it was said that he had awakened a medium wind talent, and now he was already in the martial master realm, and under his command, he had gathered more than a dozen teammates in the late stage or even early stage of martial master. It was considered a relatively powerful force within the base. Of course, what Chu Mo was more concerned about was the level 3 fierce beast that they had hunted. A level 3 ferocious beast was already at the level of a human martial master. It must have an extremely powerful talent. Go over and take a look. Chu Mo instantly made up his mind, so he followed the flow of people and went over. Soon after arriving at the street corner, he saw that the place was swarming with people. The Wind Chaser Hunter Slayer Squad was very famous in Luoyang Base, and many people treated them as idols. At this moment, they all gathered around. On the one hand, they wanted to admire these team members, and on the other hand, they also wanted to see what a level 3 fierce beast looked like. When Chu Mo had just squeezed into the crowd, he heard cries of astonishment rise one after another. It's actually an earth dragon beast. Isn't this the ferocious beast that wreaked havoc in the north of the base? It's rumored to have entered the third-level medium ranks, and there were once quite a few martial artists who were brutally killed, and there were even martial masters who were devoured by it. The Wind Chasing Squad was actually able to hunt it down. Captain Wind Chasing thinks that he should have already entered the mid-martial master stage. How terrifying. When Chu Mo looked over, he saw a dozen or so martial artists standing on the street, exuding a powerful aura. One of the martial artists spoke. Our Wind Chaser Hunter Killer Squad is powerful. Captain Chasing the Wind is already in the mid-martial artist realm, able to hunt and kill third-level ferocious beasts, now recruiting team members, requesting to be in the late martial artist stage and above strength. If there is a tribute talent, it can be lowered to the early stage of the martial artist stage. Treatment. Chu Mo didn't care what he said, but instead, he looked his gaze towards their front. A huge ferocious beast corpse was placed on the ground. It looked a bit like a mountain-piercing armor, but its size was huge, 5 feet long, and the fangs in its mouth were extremely harsh, flashing with a cold light. Even though it was already dead, it still carried a thick pressure. Standing in front of it, one could not help but feel suffocated. Chu Mo noticed that someone was carefully touching the corpse of the earth dragon beast, so he squeezed over as well, taking advantage of the people's inattention to sneakily touch his hand to the corpse, pretending to be curious. Target, Grade 3 Medium Fierce Beast Earth Dragon Beast. Can be collected. Please ask if it's harvestable? The information surfaced in front of his eyes. Without the slightest hesitation, Chu Mo murmured in his mind, collect. Successful collection. Acquired medium cultivation physique. Please ask if it is fused. Arrived. Looking at the prompt, Chu Mo immediately revealed a flash of surprise in his eyes. He did not immediately fuse, but flipped his hand to hide the physique, and then retreated silently. Although it was still possible to continue collecting. However, Chu Mo was afraid that collecting the essence blood of this earth dragon beast would cause the wind-chasing squad to discover the abnormality, so he promptly withdrew anyway. The most needed had already arrived, so there was absolutely no need to be greedy and risky. This action was extremely swift, adding up to no more than 3 seconds. Coupled with the fact that Chu Mo did it extremely covertly, therefore no one noticed his abnormality. Leaving the crowd. One could still hear that wind-chasing squad member soliciting for manpower. But at this time, Chu Mo was already on his way towards home. Returning home, locking himself inside the house since. Chu Mo took out the collected physique and a touch of uncontrollable joy appeared on his face. Medium cultivation physique. It was an orb that appeared white in color, about the size of a glass bead, which contained extremely profound rules. After carefully admiring it, he then silently chanted, "Fusion." The words fell. Boom. A violent ball of mysterious energy rushed into the body, raging in the limbs and bones under such power. Chu Mo could feel the tendons and bones in his body being constantly broken, reorganized, and broken. In such a cycle. Intense pain surfaced once again. Fortunately, he had already prepared for it, so he gritted his teeth and didn't say a word. A dozen seconds later. The pain faded. Chu Mo was covered in sweat and panted heavily. With the experience from the last time, he now understood that this was the result of the fusion being completed. Try what effect the medium cultivation talent that I just obtained has. Chu Mo rested for a while, then he stood up and performed the 21st style body forging technique. A quarter of an hour later. A set of body forging technique was executed in its entirety. In the next moment, a powerful warm current surged into his body from all parts of heaven and earth, then slowly flowed through to his limbs and bones, quenching his body. This stream of warmth had grown at least 10 times more than before when he had the thunder attribute talent exercise. Terrifying. A medium cultivation physique is truly powerful. Performing it once is more than comparing it to the 10 times I practiced before. If this continues, even without the addition of Fierce Beast Essence Blood, I'll be able to enter the martial artist realm within half a year. And if I have the enchantment of the Fierce Beast Essence Blood, I am sufficient to ensure that I enter the martial artist realm within 3 months. Feeling such a cultivation speed, Chu Mo revealed a smile. Chapter 5 Siege Trial, Heart of Killing. Inside the practice room. Chu Mo sweated like a pig. Both fists continuously landed on the machine, causing the strength testing machine to tremble crazily, flashing out number after number. 3,289. 3,321. 3,275. 3,306. Bang! Chu Mo's last punch, carrying the power of lightning, landed on the machine with a loud bang. The numbers jumped again and were completely fixed. 6,643. A medium cultivation physique is really strong. In just a month's time, it boosted my strength by more than 1,100 pounds, making my physical strength step into the middle stage of martial apprentice, and by transporting the power of thunder and lightning, it is even comparable to the late stage of martial apprentice. If I could obtain the aid of fierce beast blood, my strength would increase even faster. Such a speed of progress, even a recognized heavenly pride like Qin Shiwei can't do it. That means. Chu Mo stood in place, slowly calming his breath while looking at the numbers on the machine. A flash of brightness appeared in his eyes. Today's me, I've already called myself a genius of Luoyang base. Medium cultivation physique. Subpar lightning attribute talent. If such news were to circulate, it would be enough to make countless great powers of Luoyang base throw olive branches at him. Within the academy, he would even be elevated to the elite class and cultivated with the treatment of a heavenly pride, but I can't do that. Chu Mo shook his head. I have not detected any talent previously and am a recognized ordinary person. If I were to expose my talent physique at this time, it would likely attract unsuspecting probes and even speculations. Having survived for several years in his previous life amidst the post-apocalyptic world, he deeply understood that human nature could not withstand any temptation. Even if exposing his gifted physique would allow him to never lack any cultivation resources again, but he couldn't take that risk. The only way is to rely on the gathering technique and continuously increase my strength. Only when he reaches the martial master or even grand master realm will he be able to defy any temptation. And at that time only then will one be able to control one's own destiny and have more choices. Thinking like this, Chu Mo hid his excitement. Wiping the sweat from his body, he walked out of the practice room, took out some meat from the refrigerator that had been cooked right before, and directly ate it. A full 5 pounds were eaten by him like a windstorm. Cultivation was very consuming of the human body's energy, so one had to eat more to replenish it. And today's martial apprentice realm was still nothing. Chu Mo had heard that those martial artists and even martial masters had to eat tens of pounds of meat in one meal. The only way to replenish nutrition without having to rely on eating was to reach the Grand Master realm and be able to directly absorb heaven and earth's vital energy after eating. After taking a bath, Chu Mo changed his clothes and planned to go out. It had been 2 months since he had gone to the academy. After the great change in the heavens and earth, students no longer studied cultural knowledge since they graduated from high school, but instead, they were promoted to study at the Martial Arts Academy. In fact, there were scientists at the beginning who suggested that children should build a foundation from a young age. However, it was only later after verification that they realized that Yuan Qi was very subtle. The only way to detect the natural physique and practice the body forging method was to reach the age of 15, after all the roots and bones in the body had been set otherwise. Forcing one to cultivate before one's age would only damage one's foundation. In serious cases, it could even lead to a reversal of qi and blood, which could lead to loss of life. Therefore, it was only after graduating from high school that the martial arts program began to be taught at full strength. Because cultivation was a more personal matter, the academy's management was very loose. Normally, students were cultivating in their own homes, and would only come to the academy when they encountered doubts about martial arts, or when the academy organized roundups. This time Chu Mo went to the academy because his class was organizing a roundup trial today. Everyone was required to arrive. Qin Shiwei had gone out to buy meat, so Chu Mo didn't care, and simply left a note, then closed the door and headed in the direction of the school half an hour later. Chu Mo had then arrived at the entrance of the Luoyang First Academy. The Luoyang base had several martial arts academies as well as martial arts halls that taught students to practice martial arts. Among them, the First Academy could be said to be the strongest, and the teachers were also the most powerful. Chu Mo had excelled in high school culture classes, so he had entered the First Academy. As a result, he was detected to not have any cultivation physique or talent. In fact, there were many people like him every year after advancing to the Martial Arts Academy. Generally, after not being able to detect any talent, they would be arranged to study in the Fifth Academy at the bottom of the rankings. However, Chu Mo, because he had the shelter of the genius Qin Shiwei, the academy considered many things within the academy and ended up leaving him behind. Just so. he became the laughingstock of the entire First Academy. Every time he went within the academy, there were quite a few people who mocked him, thinking that he was just a waste of time who ate soft food and had no qualifications to stay in the First Academy. And the reason why the original owner hated Chen Shiwei so much, there was also this aspect in it. In the original owner's thoughts, Chen Shiwei was not thinking about him at all when he did this, he purely just wanted to see him laugh. Such thoughts, in Chu Mo's opinion, were really very childish. The First Academy was the strongest academy within the Luoyang base, and the only way he could improve his cultivation physique was to stay here. All of this could be described as Chen Shiwei's good intentions, but the original owner was just immersed in his own world, constantly hurting the other party. Shaking his head, he waved these thoughts away. Walking within the academy, he found the classroom he was in. Just as he entered, he saw everyone gathered around a young man dressed in gorgeous clothes with a haughty face, speaking with a face full of compensating smiles. Zhou Qi is truly worthy of being the genius of our class. In such a short period of time, he has already reached the peak of the middle stage of martial apprentice and possesses the strength of 6,000 pounds. Growing 600 pounds of strength in 2 months is truly terrifying. It's rumored that this class trial is very generous. Not only are there 3 bottles of first-grade ferocious beast blood, there's even a copy of immortal-grade upper-grade martial skill. Unsurprisingly, Zhou Qi should be able to win first place in this competition. Once we get these rewards, we'll be able to smoothly step into the late stage of martial discipleship. Maybe when we come back, we'll be included in the elite class by the academy. Envious. The crowd said one thing to each other, and their words were filled with envy. The elite class. It was the genius class of the First Academy, and there were currently only 23 people. Any one of them was the pride of the younger generation of Luoyang base. If one could enter the elite class, their future prospects would be unlimited. And seeing that Zhou Qi, who was in the same class, was likely to enter the elite class, who could not be envious? Who couldn't flatter him? At the moment Zhou Qi, who was being courted by the crowd, listened to these words, but his face was full of arrogance. And just at this moment, however, he suddenly saw Chu Mo, who had just come in, and immediately brightened up. Chu Mo, you soft eater actually dares to come? At those words, everyone in the class subconsciously turned around and glanced at Chu Mo. Chu Mo actually came too? This punk has no cultivation physique, what's he doing here? This is good. It is said that Zhou Qi, but like Chen Shiwei for a long time, launched a lot of pursuit offensive, and threatened to be imperative to it, and Chu Mo as Chen Shiwei's fiancé, a waste of soft rice man. He. If he also participates in this roundup trial, Zhou Qi definitely won't give him a good time. This is going to be a good show. The words of the crowd were filled with gloating. As expected, Zhou Qi excluded the crowd and arrived in front of Chu Mo. His eyes were filled with contempt and disdain. I didn't think that you actually had the guts to participate in the roundup trial. But just in time, I'll take this opportunity to tell you solemnly. He came up to the front and whispered, didn't you have to rely on Chen Shiwei? Then I'll let you see with your own eyes, in front of your face, how Chen Shiwei wails and cries under me. In the voice, it was full of arrogance. While hearing these words, Chu Mo's eyes stared and flashed a cold aura. You are looking for death. What? Could it be that you still want to kill me? Zhou Qi seemed to have heard the biggest joke in the world. The whole person let out a loud laugh, then said to the students behind him, you see, this is incompetent rage, the sorrow of the weak. After saying that, he turned back. Zhou Qi pretended to organize some of Chu Mo's collar and said with a smile, I know you hate me to die immediately at this moment, but I advise you to think about it first, whether or not you can walk out of this trial alive. The words fell. Zhou Qi turned around with a big smile. Chapter 6, The Wild. He wants to kill me. Chu Mo's heart sank. The several years of struggling to survive in the end of the world in his previous life had caused Chu Mo to have long been used to seeing killing and death. In that era, the only one who could be trusted was himself. It was impossible for someone who wasn't ruthless to survive. The fact that Chu Mo was able to struggle for several years as an ordinary person before finally dying under the zombie tide was that he was cautious and resolute while killing. As for Zhou Qi, he first insulted Qin Shiwei. Afterward, he showed his desire to kill him. In addition to this person is a potential martial arts disciple. If not eliminated early, sooner or later will become a big trouble. Although Chu Mo did not take the initiative to cause trouble. But when it came down to it, he also knew the reasoning behind eliminating the roots. With this thought in his mind, the gaze he looked at Zhou Qi revealed a morose killing intent. You want to kill me, then I will kill you first. After waiting for a few moments, the two martial realm teachers had arrived. After counting the number of people and confirming that the entire class had arrived, without any nonsense, they directly told everyone to get into the car. The car was also a yuan power-driven machine. After the weather changed drastically, all electronic devices were out of order, and the implements that people used daily and the vehicles that they traveled in were all replaced with yuan power or yuan stone-driven. The car drove and traveled all the way towards the outside of the base. Seeing the direction the car was traveling in, some students were a bit curious and couldn't help but ask, "Teacher, where are we going?" "The wild area outside the base." "What?" Hearing this, all the students in the car were shocked. The wild area outside the base was very dangerous, filled with dangerous ferocious beasts. Only martial artists could have some self-preservation and go out hunting. But even so, there were still many crises. And they were nothing more than a group of martial apprentices, and even the vast majority of them were only pre-martial apprentices. Going out into the wild was almost equivalent to sending them to their deaths. "Don't worry too much." Seemingly seeing that the students were all a bit scared, the teacher smiled and said, "This time, what we are going to is the north of the city, where a third-level ferocious beast, the Earth Dragon beast, was originally coiled up, but was hunted by the wind-chasing squad some time ago. The base then enlisted more than 10 hunter-killer squads to clean it up, decapitating all the grade 2 and above ferocious beasts and opening up a hunting area with a 20-mile radius. Nowadays, there are only grade 1 ferocious beasts in that area, which just happens to be used as the Academy's trial roundup place. Not to mention, Teacher Lin and I will both accompany the guards, so there won't be an out-of-control situation." Hearing this, the students relaxed. There were only grade 1 ferocious beasts, plus there were also 2 mid-martial artist teachers accompanying the guards, then their safety on the other hand could be greatly improved. While talking, the car quickly exited the base, and after traveling another distance, it stopped. It arrived at the destination. The crowd got out of the car in turn and looked at the scene in the wilderness rather curiously. Chu Mo was also the same. It was still his first time out in the wild. Looking around, he saw that as far as the eye could see, it was like a barbaric land, with sky-high ancient trees and intertwined vines everywhere. If he hadn't just come out of the base, he would have thought that he had entered a primitive deep forest. Yuan Qi not only allows humans to master extraordinary abilities, but also allows ferocious beasts and even plants to mutate and grow like these trees and vines, if in the past, want to grow into this size, at least need hundreds or even thousands of years. But under the nourishment of Yuan Qi, it only takes a few decades. Such as those fierce beasts, some are drilled from the space cracks, some are nourished by the Yuan Qi, and thus mutated. Because of this, the wild is very dangerous. But at the same time dangerous, often accompanied by chance. The wild also has a lot of heavenly treasures, some swallowed, can make people grow strength, and some can even make people awaken talent. These are often worth a lot of money, after bringing back to the base, can be sold at a sky-high price. Coupled with the fact that although the ferocious beasts were dangerous, they were full of treasures, so they also gave rise to many hunter squads that traveled in the wilderness and hunted ferocious beasts. This roundup trial, adopting the point system, with the strength and grade of the hunted beasts to calculate the points, the first-ranked person can obtain the Academy's reward of 3 bottles of grade 2 fierce beast blood, plus a bronze grade martial skill. Second place will receive 2 bottles of grade 2 ferocious beast blood. Third place receives 1 bottle of grade 2 fierce beast blood. Below third place, there are no rewards. This is a communication talisman. If danger occurs, immediately crush it, Teacher Lin, and I will receive the message and go to rescue. Don't think that with a communication talisman you can rest easy. There are countless dangers in the wilderness. Remember to be careful with everything. Alright, now everyone enters the wilderness. This roundup trial lasts for 5 days, and you can't come out until it's over. Such a reward could not be described as not generous. Especially the bronze grade martial skills, it made all the students rub their fists and jump at the chance. That was why when the teacher finished telling the rules, all the students took their summoning talismans and couldn't wait to enter the wild area in order. Zhou Qi, as the first in his class, was naturally the first to enter. After getting the summoning talisman, he glanced back at Chu Mo, revealing a touch of provocation in his eyes, then he held his head high and walked towards the wild area with large strides. Regarding such provocation, Chu Mo was indifferent and his face remained as usual. Soon, it was his turn. Seeing Chu Mo, the teacher's face was filled with complexity. It seemed like he wanted to say something, but in the end, he sighed and said, "You don't have the physique to cultivate, so once you go in, stay in one place and hide well." "Many thanks, teacher." In response to such a kind reminder, Chu Mo said a thank you, then received the summoning talisman and walked within the wild area behind him. The teacher couldn't help but shake his head. The vegetation here is so lush. After entering the dense forest, Chu Mo carefully walked forward. He didn't immediately start hunting wild beasts, but instead, he intended to look for other people's traces. To be exact, he was looking for Zhou Qi's traces. This person had insulted Qin Shiwei and had murderous intentions towards him, so Chu Mo naturally wanted to kill him at the first opportunity to eliminate any future problems. Only a pity. This was a primitive dense forest, with trees and vines everywhere, so much so that the line of sight was also obscured. The student in front of him was only a few steps ahead of him before he could not find any trace. Since I can't find it for the time being, let's start hunting ferocious beasts for the time being, and in the meantime, I'll exercise my practical combat skills. There's still a long time left and right, and this place is only 20 miles in size, so I can always run into it. Thinking like this, Chu Mo settled down. Carefully moving forward in the dense forest, his spirit was taut, on guard against any threat that might come at any time. The wilderness was full of crises, so there was no room for carelessness. Although he had a thunder attribute talent, and his killing power could be considered to be at the forefront of many talents, but in the end, it was only second class, not quite invincible, so of course he had to be careful and on guard. All the way forward. About half a child, Chu Mo suddenly stopped. His eyes were like jingles as he looked ahead. In his line of sight, not far ahead, behind the cover of the dense forest, a pair of ghostly blue pupils were revealed. After the pupils, there was a body about 2 meters long, half a man tall, and at this moment, its limbs were stomping on the ground and its fangs were sharp as it gazed at Chu Mo, a grade 1 inferior ferocious beast. Iron Ridge Dog. Chu Mo's eyes stared, and the list of common ferocious beast records, which he had learned in the academy, appeared in his mind. Chapter 7 Berserk Giant Bear, Yuan Ling, Be Liquid. Wolves and dogs had the same structure, and had always been known as having a copper head, iron bones, and tofu waist. And the Iron Ridge Dog. As the name suggests, it is that it has a very hard backbone. If you want to deal with the Iron Ridge Dog, you need to beware of the other side of the pouncing and biting. As long as you avoid a few pouncing, the Iron Ridge Dog will lose endurance. At that time, it is ordinary martial arts disciples, as long as a little precaution, can deal with. But there's no need. Just as these memories surfaced in Chu Mo's mind, the Iron Ridge canine was the one that had already pounced over with a swish. Chu Mo's eyes stared, his body didn't avoid or dodge, and he directly blasted his fist up. Boom! A fist was thrown straight out, wrapped in the power of lightning, and smashed into the head of the Iron Ridge Dog. Only a bone-cracking sound could be heard. He saw that the Iron Ridge Dog had already cracked its skull, and the entire body flew out upside down. It fell to the ground and was no longer moving. Killed in seconds. With the power of thunder and lightning added, one can have a strength of more than 6,000 pounds, comparable to a late-stage martial apprentice. A mere Iron Ridge canine is not a match at all. Chu Mo shook his head. He then slowly stepped forward and removed one of the front legs of the Iron Ridge canine with the knife he had brought with him. This was a token that proved that he had beheaded the Iron Ridge dog subsequently. Chu Mo took out a few more vials from his pocket, cut open the Iron Ridge dog's heart, and poured the heart blood into the vials. Fierce beast blood. Even though it was only a first-class inferior ferocious beast, the blood produced from its body still had the effect of increasing strength for a martial apprentice. After handling everything, Chu Mo then took the front leg and the ferocious beast blood and continued on his way. Time passed in a flash. Without realizing it, the sky gradually darkened. In the dense forest, Chu Mo killed the Grade 1 medium ferocious beast silver-ringed viper in front of him with a single punch, then wiped off the blood on his face, so he stood in place and slowly calmed his breathing. After a day of killing, together with this silver-ringed viper, Chu Mo had already killed 7 ferocious beasts, all of which were at the first level medium or lower level. This made his battle experience increase quite a bit, and his body's aura also became more stern and introverted. And in this day of killing, it's already dark. It seems like we need to find a safe place to rest for a while. Looking at the sky, Chu Mo said softly. Night was a paradise for ferocious beasts. Many powerful ferocious beasts would awaken and the wilderness would become even more dangerous. That was why even those hunter-killer squads, at night, would look for a safe place to recuperate and wait for dawn. Although there were no powerful beasts in this area, Chu Mo had already gone through several killings and his body was a bit tired. Not to mention that he had also obtained quite a lot of ferocious beast blood, so he could just exercise a bit. Thinking like this, Chu Mo removed the silver-ringed pit viper's snake gallbladder and put the blood into a bottle, and then left the place. A few moments later, the sun completely set, and night enveloped the land. In the middle of a huge tree cave. This was a Grade 1 medium mutant squirrel burrow, but it had previously been decimated by Chu Mo, and now that it was looking for a hiding place, it naturally thought of this place. First, several warning traps were set up at the entrance of the cave, and as long as someone touched them, they would send out a prompt. Being in the wilderness, one must pay 100,000% attention. During the daytime, Chu Mo also saw the occasional summoning signals appearing in all parts of the dense forest, thinking that those students had encountered an unpredictable danger. Although there were teachers who went to rescue them. But whether those students could last until reinforcements arrived was still unknown. In other words, on just the first day of the trial, a number of people might have already lost their lives. This was still the wilderness that had already been cleared and the danger had been greatly reduced. The danger of a true wilderness could be imagined. The only way to survive in times like these is to work hard to improve one's strength. Shaking his head, he dispersed these thoughts. Chu Mo came inside the cave and took out the collected fierce beast blood. A bottle that was only half filled. The blood of the 7 fierce beasts shouldn't have only been this much. However, the ferocious beast blood used by martial artists for cultivation was not ordinary blood, but the heart blood from the ferocious beasts, which was where the essence was. A ferocious beast naturally did not possess much heart blood. Chu Mo had killed 7 entire ferocious beasts, and the proceeds were only these. There are about 5 or so. Chu Mo estimated, then he pulled out the cork of the bottle and violently took a sip. Raging energy immediately dispersed out in all directions within his body. Chu Mo didn't dare to be slow, and hurriedly utilized the body forging method and began to exercise. Nightfall. The roars of the ferocious beasts in the dense forest rose and fell, while Chu Mo was concentrating on tempering his body and trying to improve his strength the next morning. Chu Mo woke up in high spirits. Drinking a portion of ferocious beast blood last night had increased his strength by close to 100 pounds, and although the effect wasn't very powerful, if he was able to continue drinking ferocious beast blood, the gain it would bring would be extremely huge. Normally, after drinking a serving of fierce beast blood, an ordinary martial artist would need at least a month to digest it. If one continued to take it during this period, it would easily lead to a riot of qi and blood. However, the digestion time also depended on talent. The stronger the talent physique, the shorter the time in between. With Chu Mo's medium cultivation physique, plus a second-rate thunder attribute talent, the digestion time required was 3 days. In other words, the next time he took the fierce beast blood, it would need to be 3 days later. According to this kind of progress, one could take it 10 times in a month, and even if it's inferior ferocious beast blood, it would still be able to grow 1,000 pounds of strength out of thin air. Chu Mo was very satisfied with such progress. At the same time, he also understood why martial artists with high talent and physique progressed at a rapid pace, while those with poor talent and physique progressed slowly. In reality, it was because of the digestion speed of the ferocious beast's blood, coupled with the different talent and physique. The heaven and earth yuan qi communicated by performing the body forging method was also different. This back and forth, the gap during the period was more than 10 times 100 times. Simply washing up. After performing another set of body forging method to warm up, he took out a large piece of ferocious beast meat that he cut last night and roasted it on the spot half an hour later, after eating and drinking. Bringing everything with him, Chu Mo continued towards the depths of the dense forest. Yesterday, he had been roaming around the periphery, and the ferocious beasts that he had killed were all rank 1 lower and medium, which was no longer any difficulty for him. Today, Chu Mo planned to try a grade 1 upper-class ferocious beast, to see exactly where his limits were. However, just after walking for a few moments, Chu Mo vaguely heard the sounds of violent fighting coming from the front. He immediately moved his expression and padded over. Arriving at a jungle, Chu Mo's gaze looked over. He saw that about 100 meters away, in an open space, a martial apprentice was fighting a ferocious beast. The aftermath of the battle was extremely harsh, pushing down and cutting down all the surrounding trees. The ferocious beast was a giant bear that was 4 or 5 meters tall, with a sturdy figure that carried a heavy might, and between its hands and feet, it carried a terrifying air-breaking sound. The might was so great that the martial apprentice was unable to fight at all, and could only retreat back and forth. This is the berserk giant bear. Chu Mo immediately recognized the origin of this ferocious beast. The berserk giant bear, a grade 1 superior ferocious beast, had infinite strength, making it difficult for even a martial artist to cope with it. There is a record of it in the academy. Wherever the berserk giant bear frequents, there is bound to be a yuan spirit hive around it. The yuan spirit beehive had a yuan spirit bee in it. This bee's strength was not enough, but it was able to brew yuan spirit bee liquid, which when taken by a martial artist, could increase the speed of forging the body, and even help the martial artist in digesting the ferocious beast's blood. If I can obtain the assistance of yuan spirit bee liquid, it will allow me to greatly reduce the digestion interval of drinking fierce beast blood. Such a good thing is not to be missed. Thinking so, Chu Mo directly rushed over Chapter 8, encountering Zhou Qi. Muji was anxious in his heart. He was originally searching for ferocious beasts in the dense forest, but who knew that he had intruded into the berserk giant bear's territory halfway? The berserk bear was a grade 1 superior beast. Its strength was comparable to that of a late martial apprentice, whereas he had only entered the mid-martial apprentice stage, with less than 4,000 kilograms of strength, so how could he be a match for the beast? At that moment, he intended to flee, but who knew that the berserk giant bear thought that he had intruded into the territory and wanted to steal the bee liquid, and even chased after him. Unable to do anything about it, Muji could only meet the battle. But the berserk bear's strength is very powerful. He is not a match, just a hand-to-hand will fall into the wind. If this continued, I'm afraid that it wouldn't take long for him to lose and fall into the giant bear's food. As for the crushing of the summoning talisman, to seek help. If he crushed it, not to mention whether the 2 teachers would be able to rescue him in time, after he crushed it, his training would be suspended. Such a good opportunity to go out and practice, Muji really do not want to miss, therefore, he hesitated until now. And at this time, Muji's corner of the eye suddenly saw a figure is flying fast to come. At that moment is a great joy. Students, fast with me to kill this berserk giant bear, after the two of us equally share the yuan spirit be liquid. Before he finished his words, he was able to see the person coming. Chu Mo. What's the use of this punk coming, it's still a death sentence. Muji was instantly disappointed. And just when his mind was negligent because of Chu Mo's arrival, it was just when the berserk giant bear found an opportunity and slapped him over. Muji was unable to dodge, and was directly slapped away, his chest immediately dented, and the entire person flew out backwards, spilling a large amount of blood in the air. When he landed on the ground, he was no longer moving. And just rushed to Chu Mo, saw this scene, could not help but frown. Sinful animal, actually still dare to show off, see me decapitate you. The words fell. Chu Mo took a rushing step, while raising his hand forward, a layer of purple electric light was immediately wrapped around the palm of his hand, wrapped in the momentum of thunder, such as Tarzan's pressure, smashing towards the giant bear. Boom! A fist blasted on the giant bear's body, and the tremendous power made the giant bear couldn't help but dent its body. At the same time, the berserk lightning power quickly spread all over the giant bear's body, causing all the fur on its surface to instantly scorch black, and a smell of scorched flesh and blood also steeply came from it. With just one strike, the giant bear was injured. However, at the same time, it also caused it to directly go berserk. Roar! 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 Under the hissing, the giant bear went completely berserk, its eyes turning blood red as it waved its huge bare paw to strike in a completely insane manner. Every time it fell, it caused the earth to shake. Encountering such a situation, even if it was Chu Mo who didn't dare to swipe at it, he could only dodge and counterattack at the same time. One person and one bear fought together like this. Berserk Giant Bear is a grade 1 superior ferocious beast, strength is infinite. In terms of strength, Chu Mo is not a match. However, the giant bear's figure was not flexible. Chu Mo could completely dodge. Plus, he had the power of thunder and lightning, which could be ranked at the top of the list in terms of killing and destroying. Therefore, the giant bear could not reach him at all, and every time he landed a punch, the lightning power attached to it could drill into the giant bear's body, destroying the other party's bodily functions. At this moment, while Chu Mo dodged with ease, he said with a smile on his face, "You sinful animal, you have been hit hard by my lightning power one after another, you are already at the end of your strength, I'll see how much longer you can hold out." As expected, a few minutes later, the berserk giant bear's aura began to fall continuously and soon withered, taking advantage of his illness. Seeing this, Chu Mo's eyes flashed as he directly took a dash step forward, raised his fist, and directly smashed it towards the giant bear's head. Rumble! Accompanied by a shocking dull rumble, the head of the berserk giant bear was hit so hard that it finally couldn't support it and fell to the ground with a loud bang. After twitching a few times, it stopped moving. Seeing this, Chu Mo couldn't help but let out a long breath. A grade 1 superior ferocious beast is really powerful. Don't look at it as if he hunted the berserk giant bear with ease and simplicity, but in reality, it was only taking advantage of the opponent's clumsy figure. Once he was struck by the other party, he would immediately be seriously injured without dying, without the ability to fight back. So it seems that speed is also vital in a fight. If I can find a wind attribute talent to make up for my shortcomings, my battle prowess can be taken to the next level. Chu Mo recuperated in place, and then he intended to go forward to harvest the loot. However, right at this moment, he suddenly moved his expression and looked ahead. In the distance, a silhouette was flying in. And when it arrived and saw the situation in the field, it immediately laughed, treading through the iron blood without looking for a place to go. It took me no time to get. Chu Mo, you still let me meet you. The person who came was clearly none other than Zhou Qi. This time, when he participated in the trial, in addition to wanting to win first place and get the academy rewards, he also brought along an important mission. Ever since that third-level ferocious beast, the Earth Dragon Beast, had been killed, the base had dispatched more than a dozen hunter-killer squads to clear this area of ferocious beasts, and his father, as a late-stage martial artist powerhouse, was among them. As a result, he discovered a hidden secret treasure within the nest of that earth dragon beast by chance. At that time, Zhou Chun was overjoyed and had planned to take it out, but unfortunately, there were too many people around him, so it was not good to do it for a while. Therefore, he could only record the location first and return to the base. Later, when he learned that the First Academy was going to organize a trial, Zhou Chun told his son Zhou Qi about it and asked him to retrieve it according to what his father said. That secret treasure was most likely the 10,000 years spirit marrow, and it was also possible that there was something else hidden. It was just that in the heat of the moment, he didn't have the time to examine it in detail. But just that was enough to make Zhou Qi go crazy over it. The 10,000 years spirit marrow was the most excellent heavenly treasure. It was rumored that after using it, a martial artist could enhance their natural physique. Based on this alone, once something like this was circulated, even great masters would have to fight over it. And if he was able to obtain it, with the 10,000 years spirit marrow and the reward from the academy, he would be able to completely and quickly step into the realm of a martial artist, and in the future, he was even expected to be a grand master or even higher. At that time, the district of Chen Shiwei, not still within reach? The secret treasure is precious. In order to hide the news, so since he entered the wild area, he dispersed the followers around him, and traveled alone to where the secret treasure is located. However, he did not expect to see Chu Mo halfway there. For this person, Zhou Qi had long since developed killing intent. It was just that it was not a good idea to do so within the academy, and now that he had encountered him in the wilderness, Zhou Qi did not mind killing him with his own hands. Thinking this way, Zhou Qi directly said, "Chu Mo, have you thought about how to die? If you kill me, aren't you afraid of being punished by the academy knowing about it?" Chu Mo's face was calm as he said in a faint voice, "The academy strictly prohibits students from killing each other. Once discovered, the cultivation will be abolished instantly. You should be aware of that." "And who can know that I killed them?" Zhou Qi lost his smile and glanced around, saying, "Besides, even if the academy knows about it, what can it do?" Mu Ji encountered the berserk giant bear, and eventually killed it under its forceful battle, while you took advantage of Mu Ji's weakness, and took the opportunity to sneak attack and brutalize your classmates. I, Zhou Qi, just happened to be passing by, and when I saw this cruelty of yours, I was instantly enraged, and chopped off the scum, Chu Mo. In this way, instead of blaming me, the academy will also reward me. And after your death, Chen Shiwei can be included in my room. Only a pity. Originally still want to let you personally see Chen Shiwei in my body under the Wanchaoqing pleasure, now you are unable to see." Speaking here, Zhou Qi's face also showed a touch of regret. "In fact, you and I did not have a deep hatred. If it was under normal circumstances, the high and mighty me would not even notice you who are as humble as the dust of an ant. But the fault lies in the fact that you, as Chen Shiwei's fiancé, are just a waste with no cultivation talent. While Chen Shiwei is my forbidden domain. Being able to become Chen Shiwei's fiancé is your fortune, but it is equally your misfortune, the misfortune of being a weakling," Zhou Qi said with emotion. "You're right." Chu Mo nodded. Hearing this, Zhou Qi was somewhat surprised. Then, seemingly thinking of something, he suddenly realized, "You can't be thinking that death is on the horizon, thus wanting to echo my words, thus begging to live, right? That's impossible. You misunderstood my meaning." Chu Mo shook his head and interrupted Zhou Qi's words, "What I mean is that Chen Shiwei is my forbidden domain. So." He looked at Zhou Qi and said with a calm face, "I have to ask you to die." The words fell. A raging force was abruptly declared from his body. Chapter 9, Killing Zhou Qi, Fusing Wind Attribute Talents. Before Zhou Qi could react, he saw a fist shadow wrapped in purple electric arcs, like a shocking wave, slamming down. This scene immediately shocked Zhou Qi. But he reacted quickly, his body flashed, like a ghost, dodging over, while drawing out the long knife he carried on his body and sweeping it over. The knife carried a flickering cold aura, shaped like a pike, sweeping away. But This terrifying knife was facing the fist shadow at the moment, but it didn't play a role at all, and was directly destroyed. What? Zhou Qi's face was filled with shock, almost in disbelief. You managed to break my sky-breaking blade. You're a late-stage martial apprentice? And a lightning attribute talent? That's impossible. You're just a recognized waste who can't cultivate. How is this possible? Zhou Qi simply couldn't believe what he was seeing and lost his voice in shock. What you see may not be true. Chu Mo coldly snorted, his entire body's aura rose. Without the slightest bit of nonsense, he directly punched over again. Pounds of majestic peppery power erupted like a heavenly river reeling backward. Even if you're a late-stage martial apprentice, so what? I have a wind attribute talent, you can't hit me at all. Zhou Qi came back to his senses and dodged the strike from Chu Mo. Then with a greedy face, he said, you were originally just a waste, but you can suddenly have such strength. You must have gotten a great chance. When I kill you, I can snatch your chance. After saying that, Zhou Qi then relied on his speed as well as the sword arts he had practiced to tangle up with Chu Mo. Although Chu Mo was strong, he couldn't hit Zhou Qi at all. Zhou Qi, on the other hand, was able to rely on his speed and constantly wander. In the long run, Chu Mo was bound to lose. Sensing this, Chu Mo frowned but did not panic in the slightest. He only saw purple arcs of electricity wrapped around his hands, and his entire person was majestic, as if he were a god, as he continuously punched out fist shadows, swinging away Zhou Qi's long blade. Suddenly, Chu Mo seized a moment and blasted out a fist. Seeing this, Zhou Qi was still planning to rely on his speed to dodge, but who knew that his figure had just drawn away, when he suddenly saw a purple arc of electricity rise from Chu Mo's body and swiftly shoot out. Although Zhou Qi was very fast, but how could he be faster than lightning? Click! The arc of electricity raged like a swimming dragon, wrapped in a terrifying destructive force, ruthlessly splitting on Zhou Qi's body. Ah! Suffering such a heavy blow, Zhou Qi was instantly covered in smoke, screaming miserably as he flew out backwards. It flew out a dozen meters away before it smashed into a large tree and slid down. A mouthful of blood was spat out with a wow sound. Zhou Qi's face was like gold paper, but he was bared in disbelief. This is impossible. How could I lose to a punk like you? Zhou Qi was struck down. As a quasi-genius of the Luoyang Base First Academy, and with his father being a late-stage martial artist powerhouse, Zhou Qi had grown up with a golden spoon in his mouth. He had already gotten used to being invincible at the same level. In the entire Luoyang Base, apart from those true geniuses in the elite classes, no one in the ordinary younger generation could be placed in his eyes at all. But today. But he was defeated head-on by a waste that he had always looked down upon. How could this make Zhou Qi accept it? Chu Mo didn't say anything. He just slowly stepped forward, his face calm as he walked to Zhou Qi's front and raised his fist. On his fist, purple arcs of electricity traveled, carrying a terrifying destructive power. You want to kill me? Feeling such power, Zhou Qi, who was already severely injured, instantly felt a chill down his back. A flash of panic flashed across his face, but then he revealed a grimace as he threatened, "You can't kill me. My father is a late-stage martial artist powerhouse. If you dare to kill me, he won't let you off. Spare my life. I know a place where a secret treasure is hidden. Spare me, and I will tell you." Noisy. Chu Mo's complexion remained unchanged as he directly landed a punch. Accompanied by a violent sound, Zhou Qi's head was like a watermelon that exploded. At this point, Zhou Qi was dead. Chu Mo lightly breathed a sigh of relief, simply rested for a while, and then scavenged all the things on Mu Ji and Zhou Qi's bodies. Afterwards, cut off the bear's paw. Collect the ferocious beast blood. First, he cut off a bear's paw, then he took out the kettle on his body and stabbed the heart of the berserk giant bear open, and the heart blood flowed into the kettle little by little. The kettle, which was only half filled, was soon filled up. And the berserk giant bear's heart blood had also flowed out finally. After going to search again, he soon found where the Yuanling beehive was located. Using a clean water jug, all of the Yuanling bee liquid was next After doing all this, Chu Mo then landed his gaze on Zhou Qi. This person's strength was not that high. However, when he fought with him earlier, the wind attribute talent that Zhou Qi possessed gave Chu Mo a deep impression. It was clear that he was only in the middle stage of martial apprentice strength, but he was able to rely on his speed to tangle with him, and even managed to gain the upper hand. If it wasn't for the fact that he was gifted with the thunder attribute talent, I'm afraid that he would have lost this time. Chu Mo's gathering technique had already refreshed its time and was completely capable of continuing to gather. However, he was a little uncertain for a moment. He didn't know whether or not to use the already refreshed gathering technique on Zhou Qi. Now that I already have a medium cultivation physique, there is no shortage of cultivation physiques for the time being. A higher level of physique is not something that I can access in a short period of time. And there's also a thunder attribute talent in killing, which can add to the battle power. The only thing that is lacking is agility. If I can get the wind attribute talent, then it will greatly increase my battle power. Thinking of this, Chu Mo made up his mind however. Before gathering it, there was still a need to go to a safe place. The commotion caused by their previous fight was not small, and it might have already made people notice, so in order to prevent exposure, they still needed to leave this place first. Carrying up Mu Ji and Zhou Qi's corpses, Chu Mo quickly disappeared here. Tree Cave. After Chu Mo buried Mu Ji's corpse, he looked at Zhou Qi's corpse in front of him. In front of him, a line of writing was revealed. Target, Zhou Qi. Collectible. Whether or not to proceed with the collection? Collect. Without the slightest hesitation, Chu Mo directly extended his palm in a blink of an eye. A golden illusory palm rose from his palm, and he grabbed at Zhou Qi's corpse, and when it came out again, he had already grabbed a white ball of wind. Acquisition successful. Secondary wind attribute talent acquired. Please ask if it is fused? Fusion. Along with Chu Mo's words, the ball of wind entered the body, and then the fusion process began. It was still breaking the blood veins and sinews to reorganize. But for some reason, perhaps because Chu Mo's strength was already strong, the pain of this fusion was unexpectedly alleviated by quite a bit. A few moments later, the fusion ended. Chu Mo immediately couldn't wait to start testing the wind attribute talent he had just obtained. Just by moving his body, his entire person turned into a residual shadow and rushed out. A few moments later, Chu Mo returned somewhat tired but excited. The body is a lot lighter, and the speed has also increased at least 3 times more than before. Worthy of a wind attribute talent, it's really powerful. Chapter 10 Great Harvest. Chu Mo was very excited. Such speed could not be compared to even those ordinary martial artists. In other words, Chu Mo, who possessed the lightning attribute talent and the wind attribute talent, had the strength to compete with or even defeat martial artists just by relying on his strength today. And these two talents that he possessed were both still only inferior. It was hard to imagine how terrifying it would be if the talents continued to improve. Let's see if we can gather any more good things from Zhou Qi. After slowly calming his excitement, Chu Mo then once again came to Zhou Qi's side, intending to continue collecting. Although the gathering technique could only select one target a month, it was possible to gather unlimited items on a single target. Gather. Chu Mo recited silently in his heart. Gathering successful. Acquired bronze-grade martial skill, air-breaking blade. Surprisingly, I collected a skill book. Chu Mo looked at a blue book that appeared in his hand and was somewhat surprised. Flipping it open to take a look, he found that the description on it was actually exactly the same as the blade technique Zhou Qi had used previously. Could it be that the gathering technique is not only able to gather talents and physiques, but even the skills that the deceased learned during their lifetime can be gathered? Chu Mo increasingly realized the power of the gathering technique. Although this book, the breaking blade, did not pose much of a threat to him in Zhou Qi's hands, it was ultimately a martial skill. Martial skills were very precious. Even if it was the most common bronze grade, it was still worth a lot. Even martial artists would find it difficult to get their hands on them. In this class trial, Being able to win first place was only a bronze-grade martial skill, so it was evident. Zhou Qi was only at a mid-martial apprentice cultivation level when he was able to possess a bronze-grade martial skill, so he must have learned it from his father, who was at the late martial apprentice stage. It's a good thing to have. Chu Mo nodded slightly, then slapped this martial skill towards his head. In the next instant, the entire book shattered and turned into countless streams of light that surged into Chu Mo's mind. All the techniques about this martial skill were then learned by him. There are a total of 3 layers in the breaking blade. If you can learn the first layer, you will be able to cover your blade with a layer of blade awnings, and at the 3rd layer, you can even cut out blade light. Previously, I saw that Zhou Qi had merely made his blade carry some chilling light, so I guess he hadn't really gotten started yet. Chu Mo only felt a little lucky. It was fortunate that Zhou Qi hadn't yet been initiated, otherwise it wouldn't have been easy for him to behead him. Continue collecting. Chu Mo once again covered his hand above Zhou Qi and recited silently in his heart. Gathering success. Obtained a treasure map. Treasure map? Chu Mo looked at a yellowish scroll fished out of his hand and absorbed it. In an instant, a stream of information surged into his mind. The location of the lair of the 3rd level ferocious beast Earth Dragon Beast, a suspected secret treasure of 10,000-year-old spirit marrow. It turns out that Zhou Qi came here this time, but it was actually for this. A flash of essence appeared in Chu Mo's eyes. He had also heard about the effects of the 10,000-year spirit marrow. If this news was true, it was absolutely necessary to go forward and explore it. The target's resources are depleted and cannot be collected. At this time, Chu Mo, who had organized his mood and was about to continue collecting, saw such a prompt. At that moment, he withdrew his hand with some regret. But then revealed a smile. It had to be said that although this person Zhou Qi was detestable, the resources obtained from him were all very useful. Subclass Wind Attribute Talent. Bronze Grade Martial Skill Breaking Blade. The 10,000-year spirit marrow hidden treasure for enhancing the talent physique. No matter which one it was all considered a heavy treasure. In addition to that, there was also a portion of beast blood obtained from killing a grade 1 superior beast, the berserk giant bear, as well as a full half a kilogram of yuan spirit bee liquid. There were also some proofs of fierce beasts found from Muji's body, and these could be taken out and exchanged for points. There were 4 additional copies of fierce beast blood. Finally, there were the items on Zhou Qi's body. A first-ranked upper-quality battle knife. The value was not bad, and if one wanted to buy it, it would require 500 yuan stones. And other than this battle knife, Chu Mo checked Zhou Qi's entire body, but did not find anything. Chu Mo could not help but frown. Zhou Qi had come to the wilderness trial this time. It was impossible that he hadn't killed a single prey. So he was bound to have ferocious beast blood and proof objects on his body. But right now it could not be found. Thinking like this, Chu Mo suddenly saw a small bag hanging from Zhou Qi's waist, which looked somewhat like a bomb, but the appearance was rough. Could it be? A conjecture suddenly arose in his heart. After removing the bag, holding it in his hand and carefully observing it, he immediately revealed a look of surprise. It really is a storage bag. Storage bag. It was a kind of spatial bag that could store items, with the effect of a mustard seed in a sumaru. Taken from the fur of a kind of rat called the heaven-swallowing rat, this kind of ferocious beast, although small, contains the power of space in its body. If it can be killed, take the fur and refine it, it can be made into a storage bag. However, due to the more rare swallowing rats, so it also leads to the storage bag price is very high, even the martial arts master cannot afford to buy. The Luoyang base was a small base, and there were rarely any large merchant caravans here, so it was rare to see anyone with a storage bag. I didn't think that Zhou Qi would even have such a rare thing. While marveling, Chu Mo was also extremely pleased. Originally, the things on his body had gradually increased, and it wasn't very convenient to carry them. Now that he had a storage bag, it was considered a solution to the problem. Immediately instilling yuan qi, soon the storage bag had opened. only to see that there was about 2 cubic meters of space inside, within which were also piled up some of Zhou Qi's miscellaneous items as well as ferocious beast proofs and ferocious beast blood. It was worth mentioning. There was actually a pile of yuan stones. Since the great change in heaven and earth, because the yuan qi nourishes and subtly improves the earth, it makes some places where the yuan qi is thick, it will gradually give birth to yuan stone veins. This kind of vein of yuan stone could be absorbed by martial artists during their cultivation. And because of the yuan qi energy it possessed, it became the currency of trade between martial artists. 635 inferior yuan stone. 12 portions of ferocious beast blood, including 3 portions of second-grade ferocious beast blood. This Zhou Qi is really my money-giving boy. Looking at the harvest, Chu Mo was delighted. At that moment, he placed everything in his storage pouch and then hung it on his waist. And now, Chu Mo had 21 copies of ferocious beast blood alone on him, with 3 copies of grade 2 ferocious beast blood. Plus half a kilogram of yuan spirit B liquid, as well as more than 600 yuan stones and battle knives. The value of the body could be said to be not expensive. Patting his storage bag with satisfaction, Chu Mo took a long breath and looked at the sky. It was already afternoon. There are less than 2 hours left until the sun sets. Traveling at night is too dangerous. Let's cultivate first tonight, and wait until early tomorrow morning to set out in search of the secret treasure land. Chapter 11, 10,000 Years Spiritual Marrow, Talent Enhancement. Let's try the effects of the yuan spirit B liquid first. After burying Zhou Qi's corpse, Chu Mo returned to the tree cave, took out the yuan ling B liquid, and took a sip. Phew! As soon as the substance was imported, it instantly dissolved and turned into a warm current that surged into all the limbs and bones. Wherever it passed, the blood churned and the heart beat forcefully. The ferocious beast blood energy that was originally retained in the body was also being rapidly digested. Seeing this, Chu Mo didn't dare to slow down and hurriedly executed the body forging technique. Time passed in a flash. In the blink of an eye, several hours passed. Chu Mo, who had performed 10 sets of body forging techniques in one breath, stopped covered in sweat although he was very tired. However, his eyes were extremely bright. In just a few hours, the effect of the yuan ling B liquid had completely disappeared. The fierce beast blood energy that was originally in his body and had yet to be completely digested was also all absorbed. The effect is truly terrifying. The fierce beast blood that originally took 3 days to digest was actually consumed in just a few hours. If I could have a constant supply of yuan spirit B liquid, I would be able to completely swallow fierce beast blood without limit. That way, it wouldn't take a month for me to step into the martial realm. But unfortunately, there's only half a kilogram of yuan spirit B liquid, which can only support my cultivation for 10 days at most. This was unavoidably a bit of a beauty. But Chu Mo didn't care too much about it. Shaking his head to dispel this thought and wiping the sweat from his body, he took out a bottle of ferocious beast blood and drank it in one gulp. Continue. The next morning, Chu Mo geared up and walked out of the tree cave. Last night's overnight cultivation had allowed him to drink a full 4 bottles of fierce beast blood. The effect brought about was extremely remarkable. He had grown at least 500 pounds of strength in one night. In other words, he had now reached 3,900 pounds of physical strength alone. And if he used his lightning attribute talent to enhance it, it even reached a point close to 8,000 pounds. No wonder the more the children of big families, the faster they cultivate and grow. With the supply of various heavenly materials and treasures, it makes the time to quench the body be greatly minimized, and it's completely possible to step into the martial artist realm in a short period of time. Chu Mo thought so. By this time, the sky had completely brightened. Chu Mo took out a piece of ferocious beast meat from his storage bag, roasted it, and then ate it. Half an hour later. Depart. Organizing his bag, Chu Mo extinguished the fire and set off on his journey to find the reason for the hidden treasure land. Following the map's guidance, Chu Mo traveled forward in the dense forest, and after an hour, he suddenly stopped. It's right here. Looking at the underground cave in front of him that had completely collapsed and turned into a ruin, Chu Mo murmured. This was the lair of that third-level Earth Dragon beast. Although the Wind Chaser Hunter squad would definitely search the lair carefully after decapitating the Earth Dragon beast, that treasure hiding place was extremely hidden and difficult to discover. Zhou Qing had only unearthed the anomaly by chance as well. At that moment, Chu Mo entered the cave. This underground cave was very deep and snaked all the way down. It was unknown how long it took to finally reach the end. But it was a huge stalactite cave. Surrounded by stone walls, there were no other paths to take, and it looked very empty. Chu Mo's face was as normal, and he came straight to a rock wall, his palms groping. A moment later. Found it. Chu Mo's eyes lit up, but he saw that he was touching a slightly raised piece of rock wall surface in his hand, which looked very inconspicuous. However, with a slight force, the entire palm of his hand sunk in. It was as if it was swallowed by the stone wall. However, Chu Mo knew that this wasn't actually something weird, it was just a layer of natural camouflage. Without hesitation, his body directly squeezed in. As if through a layer of sticky mucus, the eyes first black, and then clear. Only to see in front of them was a small space, about a dozen meters in size. In the middle of the area, there was a sunken pool on the ground, and at this time, a lot of milky white spirit liquid had already converged and accumulated inside. When Chu Mo gazed at it, he revealed a smile. This item. It was clearly the strange treasure nurtured by heaven and earth, the 10,000 years spirit marrow. He didn't do it immediately, but instead, he landed his gaze on another place. A corner of the stone wall. There was a jade bead suspended in the air, emitting a golden light on the outside, which looked extremely divine. It is said that where heaven and earth's wonders are born, they are accompanied by spiritual objects. Could this be the companion of the 10,000-year spiritual marrow? Chu Mo carefully observed it, but did not recognize what exactly it was. After thinking about it, he took it down and placed it in his storage bag, intending to wait until he returned to the base later to check if there were any relevant records. As a matter of urgency, it's better to use the 10,000-year spirit marrow first to enhance the natural body quality. Chu Mo landed his gaze on the pool. The 10,000-year spirit marrow did not need to be swallowed, it only needed to be applied to the body instantly. Chu Mo took off his clothes, came to the edge of the pool water, and applied this milky white spirit liquid to his entire body. Hiss. After the 10,000-year spiritual essence covered his entire body, it didn't take long for Chu Mo to feel a trace of coolness surging into his body. His entire body was warm and there was also a hint of tingling sensation. Chu Mo knew that this was a sign that the 10,000-year spiritual marrow was beginning to exert its effects. Several hours later, all of the spirit marrow liquid in Chu Mo's body was absorbed. He stood up and couldn't wait to perform a set of body forging techniques. The 21 stances were quickly performed. Afterward, a surge of yuan qi that was even more turbulent than before surged into his body and flowed through his limbs and bones. The speed of communicating yuan qi has increased by at least more than 5 times. And I can feel that the lightning attribute talent and wind attribute talent in my body have also been enhanced. I just don't know if I can see my own talent? Chu Mo lowered his head, wanting to try to see if he could view his own talent. This thought had just surfaced in his mind. The next moment, a prompt appeared before his eyes. Target, Chu Mo. Physique, higher cultivation physique. Talent, inferior thunder attribute talent, inferior wind attribute talent. Surprisingly, I'm really able to see my own information. And the talent and physique have, indeed, both been improved. Chu Mo's eyes lit up with delight. Physique had been raised to higher. And the talents were both raised to inferior. Compared to before, it could be said that the whole thing had been upgraded by a notch. In addition to that, he found that his skin had become much smoother, and even the mobilization of qi and blood power had become much smoother, worthy of being a 10,000-year-old spirit marrow. Chu Mo exclaimed in admiration. The 10,000-year-old spirit marrow could only be used once by one person, and the second time it lost its effect. And in the pool, there was still a thin layer left, barely enough for one person to use. Chu Mo thought about it and collected the spirit marrow. As for this pool, it was not destroyed. There is a silver lining to everything. Leave this chance here and wait for its next fated person. After doing all this, Chu Mo then left within this cave based on the original path. Talent and physique have all been boosted. Then the next is to kill the ferocious beasts and cultivate with all his might. Strive to make a higher level of strength before the hunt ends. Chapter 12, Returning 6,000 pounds of physical body strength. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Today was the day to leave the wilderness area. One by one, the students walked out of the dense forest and arrived at the rendezvous area. The two teachers were already waiting, counting the number of people and tallying the points. Mei Guantao, 13 points. Yuan Hani, 6 points. Kue Ning, 21 points. Lu Chen, 19 points. One by one, the academies walked out, and when they saw that their points were at the top of the list, they revealed colors of delight. And when they saw that their points were at the bottom, they showed dismay. However, no matter who it was, they all thought that they weren't going to be able to snatch first place this time. After all, the strongest in the class, Zhou Qi, had yet to come out. If nothing else, by the time Zhou Qi came out, the points he gained would be first place. With such thoughts in mind, one student after another gazed towards the exit. Even the teacher was showing a look of anticipation. However, as time passed, seeing that the stipulated time for the rendezvous was about to end, and Zhou Qi still didn't come out, everyone's faces gradually changed. What's going on? Why hasn't Zhou Qi come out yet? He shouldn't be. Impossible. Zhou Qi is the strongest martial apprentice in our class. It's simply impossible for him to have an accident. But the wilderness is treacherous, it's anyone's guess, in case Zhou Qi is more unlucky. The students privately discussed. And right at this moment, a silhouette suddenly walked out from the exit. Seeing this scene, everyone instantly perked up, thinking that it was Zhou Qi coming out. But when the silhouette walked out, many students were greatly disappointed. So it's Chu Mo. This trash actually managed to come out alive? Unbelievable. Chu Mo didn't pay any attention to these comments around him, but instead came to the teacher's face, put down the package he was carrying, and said, "Teacher, this is my harvest." The teacher opened the parcel, carefully calculated it, and said with some surprise, a total of 103 points. The moment these words came out, the surrounding students were all filled with disbelief. 103 points, this was the highest number of points gained out of all the students who came out. In other words, if Zhou Qi really couldn't come out, then Chu Mo would have become number one. But how was this possible? Chu Mo was clearly a waste who couldn't cultivate. How could he obtain so many ferocious beast materials? And then associating it with the fact that Zhou Qi, who had the strongest strength, hadn't come out until now. Chu Mo, did you see Zhou Qi in the wild area? The teacher paused and asked out loud. Of course Chu Mo couldn't tell the truth, but shook his head and said, "No." Still not telling the truth. The teacher beside him, Mr. Li, snapped, "Then where did you get so many materials of ferocious beasts on you?" "Of course it's from my own hard work to fight them out," Chu Mo said with a calm face. When this was said, everyone didn't believe it. It was well known. Chu Mo was unable to cultivate and was an ordinary person. And according to their speculations, the reason why Chu Mo was able to obtain so many materials was perhaps because Zhou Qi had met an untimely end in the wild area, and as a result, he was picked up by Chu Mo by a stroke of luck. It seems like Zhou Qi was really in danger in the wilderness, and thus met an untimely end. The teacher who counted the points couldn't help but sigh and only felt sorry. Zhou Qi was a good seedling, with hopes of becoming a cadet in the elite class, but as a result, he fell in this field trial and was buried in the belly of a ferocious beast. Everyone did not suspect that Chu Mo killed Zhou Qi. After all, it was really unlikely. If the two really met, then the one who died would definitely be Chu Mo. "Teacher, are there any more questions?" Chu Mo asked. "No, you guys get in the car first." The teacher waved his hand, paused, and then said to Chu Mo, "According to the rules, since you have the most points, and thus are the first place, the Academy's reward will be honored later." Chu Mo nodded and returned to the car, waiting to go back. One by one, the students also got into the car. Soon, the car started and headed towards the base. When he came, the car was filled to the brim with more than 40 people, but when he went back, there were only 32 people left. In one trial, more than 10 people were damaged. This was the wilderness. Dangerous and cruel. Chu Mo, within this period of time, it's best to just stay in the base all the time, and if there's nothing going on, try not to go out. Back home, Chu Mo's mind was still recalling the words his teacher had said after he had finished picking out his techniques at the academy. Of course he knew what those words meant. Zhou Qi's father, Zhou Chung, was a late-stage martial artist powerhouse, and seeing his son die in the wild, how could he let it go? Chu Mo, on the other hand, was inextricably linked to Zhou Qi's death. Zhou Chung didn't dare to hold the academy accountable, but he might set his eyes on Chu Mo. An ordinary person being targeted by a martial artist, the result could be imagined. Martial artists were not allowed to strike at ordinary people at will within the base, which was why the teacher had said this, banking on Zhou Chung being able to restrain himself. It's just that. The current me has already had a metamorphosis long ago. Chu Mo let out a cold smile ever since he had obtained the 10,000-year spirit marrow to enhance his qualification talent. The following 3 days, he had been tempering his body and fighting wild beasts. With the Yuan spirit be liquid assisting him, and Chu Mo constantly drinking the blood of ferocious beasts, in just 3 days, it caused his strength to grow by leaps and bounds. The strength of his physical body alone had increased by 2,000 pounds. Bang! Chu Mo punched the strength testing machine in front of him, only to hear a loud boom and the machine shook violently. At the very top, a line of numbers jumped out. 6,021. With the strength of his physical body alone, he had a strength of 6,000 pounds. It directly stepped into the late martial apprentice realm. Not to mention, he had the added benefit of a thunder attribute talent. The original inferior thunder attribute talent had added double the strength for him, and after obtaining the 10,000-year spirit marrow to upgrade to inferior, it was then quadrupled. In other words, nowadays, Chu Mo's punch had at least more than 20,000 gene of power. With a huge force of 20,000 pounds, Chu Mo didn't know how terrifying it was. However, on his last day, he had thrown a punch at a boulder that was 2 zhong in size. With just one blow, it was broken into pieces. Coupled with the inferior wind attribute talent, which had a speed bonus of close to 5 times, even if it was a mid-stage martial artist, he had the strength to compete with it. And at this moment, the Yuan spirit be liquid in Chu Mo's body could still support him for 6 days. There were still 6 more copies of 2nd grade ferocious beast blood, and there were still 23 more copies of 1st grade ferocious beast blood. With these, coupled with the higher cultivation physique, Chu Mo was certain that within 10 days, he would step into the martial artist realm. At that time, even if Zhou Chung, who was at the late stage of martialist, was in his face, he thought to himself that he would not fall into a disadvantage. Cultivate. In the fastest time possible, enter the martial artist realm. After making up his mind, Chu Mo began to close his mind. He wholeheartedly devoted himself to improving his strength. Chapter 13, Peak Martial Apprentice, Luo Yan Steps. Luoyang Base, Inner City, inside a single villa. A middle-aged man with a majestic appearance and a powerful aura emanating from his body, his face was shadowy as he growled, "My son is dead, and up until now, I haven't even found out who the murderer really is. What are you doing raising you for food?" Zhou Chung was filled with anger, originally staying at home, waiting for his son to convey back the good news, who knew that what he was waiting for was a bad news. How could he accept this? Across from him, Kun Yen, who had the strength of an early-stage martial artist, was being reprimanded, bowing his head in obsequiousness. After scolding, Zhou Qing slightly subsided his anger and said in a deep voice, "Although my son Zhou Qi's strength is not high, but there is only a group of grade 1 ferocious beasts in the roundup area, how could it be possible to kill my son? What's more, even if he encountered danger, possessing the wind attribute talent, it's not as if he didn't even have the chance to send a message when he encountered danger. So he must have encountered an ambush. Check. Check if my son has any enemies, and with whom he has had conflicts, all give me to find out." Hearing these words, Kun Yen's heart was a little bitter. He knew very well what Zhou Qi's character was. He was arrogant and domineering, and must have had countless enemies outside. Trying to find out who the murderer was would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. However, just then, he suddenly thought of a point and couldn't help but say, "Speaking of which, my subordinate remembered something. When I was poking around, I learned that young master had liked Chen Shiwei, a martial artist from the same school's elite class, and that Chen Shiwei had a fiancé named Chu Mo, who didn't have any cultivation physique or talent, and it was only because of Chen Shiwei's sake that he was able to go to school at the first academy and was in the same class as young master's classmates. The young master was very hostile towards him, and had repeatedly spoken out and humiliated him, whereas at the end of the roundup trial, this Chu Mo got countless ferocious beast materials to become the first place in the class test." Hearing this, Zhou Cheng's face changed slightly. "Such important news, why didn't you report it first? My subordinate just thought that this person was just an ordinary person who couldn't cultivate, so I didn't pay too much attention to it," Kun Yen said. "Stupid." Zhou Cheng's face clouded over as he said in a deep voice, "This person doesn't have any cultivation physique, yet he was able to survive the roundup and win first place, so he must be inextricably linked to my son's death. Even if it wasn't his kill, he definitely saw my son's relics. Kun Yen, you personally go and bring this Chu Mo over to me." "Heard." Kun Yen said with some hesitation, "Master, martial artists are not allowed to strike at ordinary people at will within the base, not to mention that this Chu Mo is the fiancé of a student from the elite class of the first academy, so I'm afraid that if we find out about it, we'll be very passive." "Who said to kill him?" Zhou Qing said in a deep voice, "I'm just asking you to bring him over. I'll personally force him to ask. If he's not a murderer, then naturally it's fine. If he's really my son's murderer, I'll never let him go. Besides, wouldn't you do things a little more covertly? As long as no one sees it, without evidence, even if the base is suspicious, it's impossible for them to randomly turn on me for an ordinary person." Hearing this, Kun Yen nodded, "I understand, I'll do it now." With that, seeing that Zhou Qing had no other orders, he retired. After waiting for it to leave, Zhou Qing, who was inside the room, could no longer suppress his inner rage and slammed his fist on the table with a loud bang. The table was reduced to pieces. Zhou Qi was dead, and a person could not come back from the dead. So it was just a matter of him grieving over it. The news of that secret treasure, however, was a matter of great importance. There was no way for him not to treat it with caution. Chu Mo. Muttering that name, Zhou Qing revealed a smear of killing intent in his eyes. "I'm back." Carrying a large bag of ferocious beast meat, Chen Shiwei pushed open the door and walked in. At a glance, he saw a table full of meals. Ever since that day, as long as Chu Mo was at home, he would make a table of rice and wait for her to come back. After the initial surprise to the present Chen Shiwei, she was already somewhat accustomed to it. Usually, every time she walked to her home, she needed to secretly keep cheering for herself in her heart before she could step into this house that seemed cold without the slightest bit of temperature to her, and by now, she was even rather looking forward to coming back. Putting down the meat, Chen Shiwei washed her hands and came to the dining table. The dishes had already been moved. She knew that this was because Chu Mo had already finished eating. And the fact that the dishes still had some heat to them represented Chu Mo's concern, specifically starting to cook when she was about to arrive home, so that when she came back, she would be able to eat steaming hot dishes. This was something that Chu Mo did not say. However, Chen Shiwei could feel it. This was the first time she felt Chu Mo's concern, but it was such an insignificant point that made Chen Shiwei's heart leap. After all, compared to before, today's Chu Mo was already too much better. Every time she thought about it, it felt like a dream. A dream that she didn't want to wake up from finished eating. Chen Shiwei washed the dishes, rested a little, and then came back to the training room to start the intense training. There was less than a month left before the school-wide roundup. She had to get her strength up to the martial realm within this month. Only then would she be certain of getting first place. At the same time, in the roundup, she had the backbone to face the two-headed python and kill it. Otherwise, Chu Mo would be expelled from the academy. The current me only has 9,500 pounds of strength, and I'm still 500 pounds short. Chen Shiwei, you have to cheer up. After secretly giving herself a pep talk, Chen Shiwei intended to start training. But right at this moment, she suddenly saw an unfamiliar value on the strength testing machine inside the room. 9,900. Strange, how could such a value appear on the strength testing machine? Could it be broken? Chen Shi was slightly surprised thinking like this. She didn't pay too much attention to it and planned to ask someone to come over tomorrow to do some repairs. Then she put aside these thoughts and continued to start exercising. After several days of hard cultivation, I have finally managed to reach the point of 9,900 pounds of strength in my fleshly body, only one step and one shake away from the 10,000 pounds of martial realm. But this last 100 pounds has never been raised again. I think it should be because I have already reached the peak of martial apprentice, and I must break the bottleneck in order to step into the martial artist realm. Inside the room, Chu Mo's eyes were bright as he silently thought. How to break the bottleneck, Chu Mo was not sure. As far as he knew, many martial disciples had faced this barrier, some had quickly stepped over it, while there were others who couldn't step over it for the rest of their lives. Everything seemed to depend on chance. There was no pattern. Therefore, Chu Mo was not in too much of a hurry. Since I don't have a clue for now, I might as well practice some martial arts first. Chu Mo took out a secret book with a line clearly written on the cover, Luo Yan Steps. This was the reward he received from the academy after getting first place. A bronze-level stance. It had arrived a few days ago, but Chu Mo had been obsessed with forging his body, so he hadn't started studying it yet. It just so happened that now that he was facing a hurdle, Chu Mo was thinking of initiating it. The room is too small to exert it, and it moves too much, so let's go outside and cultivate first. Thinking like this, Chu Mo then planned to go outside. He also heard the sound of Chen Shiwei coming back, so he didn't bring a key with him and closed the door before going out. Chapter 14, Beheading an Early Martial Artist. In the middle of the woods, Chu Mo was practicing his stance. As a bronze-level martial skill, the Luo smoke steps were naturally not idle. If one succeeded in practicing it, they could move quickly within a small area, with a speed that was comparable to an instantaneous shift, making it inscrutable. However, the only difference between it and instantaneous movement was that a string of shadows would appear on the route one traveled during movement, like smoke or mist. These shadows could bring some interference to the opponent, making it difficult to accurately capture the target. The effect could be described as powerful. But precisely because of this, the conditions for cultivation were also very harsh, with harsh requirements for the martial artist's breathing, qi and blood mobilization, and body flexibility. However, Chu Mo was gifted with a lower-class wind attribute, which was already compatible with martial arts such as body techniques. Therefore, there was no obstacle to practicing. Except at the beginning, there were still some stumbles. But as time passed, his mastery of the Luo Yan steps became more and more refined. Several hours later, a figure was weaving back and forth in the middle of the woods, extremely swift, as if it was smoke, often just a blink of an eye, and before one could see it, it had already disappeared. Worthy of being a bronze-level body technique, it's really strong. Chu Mo stopped and gasped for breath, his forehead slightly carrying some sweat, but a smile appeared on his face. After his painstaking cultivation, he had already managed to step Luo Yan into the door. Now that I have the dual attribute talents of thunder and wind, plus the two major bronze-level martial arts, the sky-breaking blade and Luo Yan steps, have both been gated. With these, even if I face a mid-stage martial artist, I'll have the power to fight or even defeat him. Feeling his strength slowly increasing, this was naturally something to be happy about. Looking at the time, it was already late at night. Chu Mo then planned to go home. Just as Chu Mo walked to an alley not far from his home, he suddenly frowned and swept his gaze to the gloom of the left wall. There. An old man slowly walked out. What a perceptive young man! The old man exclaimed in admiration as he walked up to Chu Mo and asked in a deep voice, "You are Chu Mo, right? Why is your excellency blocking my way?" Chu Mo frowned and said softly, "I, Kun Yin, have come this time, but on the orders of my master, I have invited you to go to the banquet." "That won't be necessary." Chu Mo said, "I am not acquainted with your family's master, and I don't want to be acquainted. Please also leave, don't stop me from going home." At these words, Kun Yin's eyes condensed slightly, and a flash of sternness appeared in his eyes. "My master is Zhou Qing, late martial artist strength. Future step into the martial artist is also very likely. Look at the entire Luoyang base is also a party of strong. You are not even willing to give this face?" Hearing these words, Chu Mo's heart was immediately startled. Zhou Qing had indeed set his sights on him. It was no wonder. After all, for Zhou Qing, not only was his son's death strange, but it also involved a heaven and earth secret treasure. Naturally, he wouldn't take it lightly. This time, Zhou Qing had sent someone to invite him, just because he wanted to force information out of him. As long as Chu Mo went, no matter what the final result was, he was afraid that he would not be able to escape. Thinking like this, Chu Mo looked at Kun Yin and said in a slow voice, "If your master personally comes, I naturally have to give a few points of face. As for you, what is it?" Hearing the words, Kun Yin immediately changed his face. Although he was Zhou Qing's subordinate, he was also in the early martial artist realm, and in the entire Luoyang base, the size was also considered a strong person. But now he was being looked down upon by a waste that was known to be unable to cultivate. This was simply a slap in his face. "Toast to the wind, since this is the case, then I will personally capture you and arrest you in front of the master." The words fell. Kun Yin's face sank, his figure flashed, his palm formed a claw and grabbed towards Chu Mo. He was at the early martial artist realm and was extremely strong. And Chu Mo was just an ordinary person, so in Kun Yin's thought, with this claw, he would definitely be able to catch him hand to hand. Just at the moment he was about to catch Chu Mo, he saw the latter's entire person disappear, leaving behind only a puff of smoke that disturbed his vision. What a subtle stance. Kun Yin was somewhat surprised and subconsciously praised it. But then he seemed to have thought of something and abruptly came back to his senses, losing his voice. "You can even cultivate? The rumors in the outside world say that you're just a waste. I didn't expect you to hide it from everyone." Chu Mo didn't say anything, he just took out the battle knife that he obtained from Zhou Qi from his storage bag and chopped towards Kun Yin. Seeing this battle knife, Kun Yin was shocked again. "Young master's battle knife. Looks like young master Zhou Qi was really killed by you. Since you know, then I'll have to ask you to die." Chu Mo coldly snorted, revolving his Luo smoke steps, his body instantly arrived in front of Kun Yin, and chopped down with a blade. Tear. In an instant, but a flash of cold aura arrived instantly, directly landing on Kun Yin's arm, blood crumbling out. "Kid, you're looking for death." Suffering this heavy injury, Kun Yin's face was livid. The previous blade was as swift as lightning. If he hadn't dodged it in a hurry, this blade would have decapitated his head. As a martial artist, he was actually injured in front of a martial apprentice, and even almost died. How could this not make him both shocked and angry? Although his left arm was heavily injured, causing his strength to be greatly reduced. But he was still a martial artist after all. At this moment, under the contained anger, wrapped in a majestic and unstoppable force, he rushed towards Chu Mo. Pity. Chu Mo secretly thought. This slash would have been able to decapitate Kun Yin. However, the other party was experienced in combat and subconsciously dodged, thus avoiding this fatal blow. But that was all there was to it. Although Kun Yin was in the martial artist realm, the difference in power between him and Chu Mo wasn't that big, and Chu Mo, while having the thunder and wind attribute talents, he had surpassed in both strength and speed. In addition, the two entry-level bronze-level sword techniques and body techniques were all executed. It could be called an all-round crush. Therefore, Kun Yin, wanting to turn the tables, was simply delusional. A few moves later, Chu Mo seized a moment and his figure flashed, transforming into a cloud of smoke. When he reappeared, he had already arrived in front of Kun Yin. Without the slightest hesitation, he directly slashed at Kun Yin's head. This time, he couldn't avoid it anymore, and his head flew up, bringing up blood like a stream. And his body fell to the ground, no longer moving. Who? Cleanly resolving a martial artist, Chu Mo let out a long sigh of relief. An early-stage martial artist doesn't have the slightest power to fight in front of me. I think that my current strength should be able to compete with mid-stage or even late-stage martial artists. But if I were to encounter a senior late martial artist powerhouse, I'm afraid I'd be a bit out of my depth. And Zhou Qing has already set his sights on me, and the person he sent this time was killed by me, so he definitely won't let it go, and next time, he will most likely do it himself. It's been a few years since he stepped into the late stage of martial arts. I'm afraid I'm not a match for him right now. Must raise to the martial artist realm as soon as possible. Chu Mo secretly thought right now, he was still a martial apprentice, although he was only one step away from being a martial artist. But this one step away was a world of difference. If he was able to step over it, his strength would inevitably grow radically. At that time, naturally, there would be no need to be afraid of Zhou Qing. I've heard that if a martial artist wants to break through the shackles of the realm, there is another way. That is to break through the limits in the midst of killing. It seems like there's a need to make a trip to the wilderness. Thinking so, Chu Mo secretly made up his mind. Chapter 15, Martial Artist Union, Su Xiao Xiao. Early the next morning, Chu Mo arrived at the martial artist supply hall within the base. This was the place where the Luoyang base's martial artists had to go when traveling to the wilderness. Because there were the largest number of large stores here, martial artists could purchase weapons and equipment with the best price and quality, and even the ferocious beast materials they obtained could be bought and sold here. In addition, martial artists could also receive quests here. Some forces and individuals would release quests, inviting martial artists to go to the wilderness to help fulfill them, and after fulfilling the conditions, they would be rewarded for their quests. Generally, many hunter-killer squads would casually take on a few missions to earn some extra money when they went to the wilderness to carry out their hunts. In simple terms, similar to the nature of a martial arts union. And Chu Mo came here with the intention of purchasing some necessities for living in the wild. People came and went in the hall, a lively scene. Chu Mo casually looked around and entered a larger store. "This lord, may I ask what you need?" A clerk walked over and respectfully said, "Our Chuiyu building sells all sorts of items, healing and recovery pills, buying and selling ferocious beast materials, and so on, at a fair price for all. I'm planning to go to the wilderness. I want to purchase some wilderness life necessities. Any recommendations?" Chu Mo asked. The clerk laughed. "That naturally has to be the first to push our store's wilderness survival kit, which contains pills for healing wounds, restoring chi and blood, and masking breath, plus insect repellents, marching tents, survival dry food and compressed ferocious beast meat and distress signal bullets, and a whole lot of other wilderness survival supplies, which almost every martial artist is equipped with a set of, and sells exceptionally well." Chu Mo looked at it and also felt it was good at that moment. He didn't hesitate and directly ordered a set. A survival kit cost 300 yuan stones. Chu Mo additionally purchased some other healing and recovery pills, in total spending about 600 yuan stones, before he was sent out the door under the respectful gaze of the shopkeeper. Yuan stone is precious, can directly take out 600 yuan stone, and face calm, seemingly do not care about the appearance, undoubtedly represents a powerful martial artist. The reason why Chu Mo was calm was mainly because these yuan stones were obtained from Zhou Qi. It belonged to a flying fortune. Even if he spent it, he wouldn't be heartbroken. Putting these survival materials in the storage bag. With everything ready, Chu Mo intended to leave the hall and head out into the wilderness. But just at that moment. But suddenly, he heard murmurs from not far away. "Please help me, please." A little girl with a thin figure stood in front of a martial artist and begged bitterly. That young martial artist was filled with difficulty, saying, "It's not that I'm unwilling to help you, it's really that your mission is too difficult. The double-headed python is a grade 2 medium ferocious beast, it needs at least a mid-martial artist's strength, and I simply can't fight it. Moreover, your mission reward is only a ferocious beast egg that has no use, and it can't even hatch out. I can't do anything about it, sorry." With that, he hurriedly left. As for the other martial artists, they all ignored this little girl and circled far away from its side. Seeing such a situation, a martial artist who originally stood not far from Chu Mo's side, speaking of this little girl, is also really miserable. Since childhood, her parents died, became an orphan, and was later adopted. Who knows that within a few years, the foster mother is also seriously ill in bed. It is really a leaky house. In order to save her adoptive mother, this little girl has come here for some days, but the task released has been unattended. The main thing is that the two-headed python is too strong, and its movements are secretive, it's hard to find, and it's really too hard to hunt it. Poor Speaking of which, the pet egg rewarded by this little girl's release mission, it said that she started hatching it since she was a child, and it hasn't broken its shell for more than 10 years, so maybe there's something to it. You believe this too? It's nothing more than an ordinary pet egg. If it was really something good, how could that little girl still be reduced to this state? That's true. A few nearby martial artists whispered as Chu Mo listened, his eyes flickered slightly. After thinking about it, he took a step over. Su Xiaoxiao sat paralyzed on the ground, filled with despair. Her foster mother was seriously ill, and the doctor said that she had to have the snake heart of the double-headed python in order to be cured. However, the double-headed python was so powerful that ordinary martial artists could hardly deal with it, and she couldn't take out a generous reward to invite a powerful martial artist to hunt it, so she could only bring out the ferocious beast egg that she had been carrying on her body since she was a child, hoping that someone would take a look at it and thus take on the task. But alas! Everyone thought that this fierce beast egg was a defective product that couldn't hatch out, so it had already been half a month, and the mission she had posted was still unattended. The doctor said that the foster mother's body didn't have much time left if it was delayed. "Hello, is this quest still available?" Just as Su Xiaoxiao was close to despair, a cool voice suddenly sounded in her ears. Su Xiaoxiao subconsciously looked up and saw a young man with a clear appearance standing in front of her. She instantly froze for a moment, but quickly reacted and said with some surprise and astonishment, "The mission is still there." For the first time in half a month, someone asked this made Su Xiaoxiao feel hopeful, but she was afraid that she had heard wrong, so she carefully confirmed, Are you taking this mission?" "Yes." Chu Mo nodded. It just so happened that the place he was going to this time was in the place where the double-headed python was found, so it was also considered to be on the way. Receiving Chu Mo's affirmation, Su Xiaoxiao burst into tears of joy and hurriedly said, "Thank you, Lord Martial Artist, thank you." "No need to be polite," Chu Mo said. Afterward, Su Xiaoxiao led Chu Mo and took this mission. Only after doing this did Chu Mo leave the hall. There's actually someone who actually took this quest? I'm afraid it's not a fool. The double-headed python is a second-level ferocious beast, not to mention the difficulty of decapitating it. The price of the snake heart alone isn't low, and to exchange it for a ferocious beast egg that can't hatch, it's a completely lose-lose deal. It's also possible that people are simply trying to do a good deed. Su Xiao's mission was considered quite famous in the supply hall. Now that the quest had been picked up, it naturally caused a small amount of discussion. And just to the side of the hall, a girl with a tall figure and a gentle temperament, who looked to be only 18 or 19 years old, stopped in her tracks. "Miss, do you need me to stop that young man?" Next to her, an old woman said in a low voice. And this old woman was wearing a green shirt with 3 golden green leaves embroidered on her chest. If there were people with sharp eyes, they would be able to recognize that the green leaves were the symbol of Luoyang Base's great power, the Jade Merchant Alliance. To have 1 green leaf on one's chest, one was a martial apprentice. With 2, it was a martial artist. And can have 3 golden green leaves, clearly represents the strength is comparable to the strength of the martial arts master. At this moment, this martial master realm powerhouse was treating the young girl beside her with respect. One could hardly imagine what kind of identity this young girl had. The young girl shook her head as she listened to the old woman's words. "Since someone else has already taken it first, there's no need for us to make a move." The old woman nodded. Then she added, "Speaking of which, this teenage boy's heart is not bad. This task is obviously thankless, and he still went out to take it next. In this era, it is considered rare." "Yes." The young girl nodded her head, her gaze looking in the direction Chu Mo left, revealing a slight approval. Chapter 16, Great Shushan Mountain, Wind-Chasing Wolf. After leaving the Martial Supplies Hall, Chu Mo headed straight towards the outside of the city. The reason why he had to take on this mission earlier was mainly because the training place he was going to this time was originally in the same direction as the place where the double-headed python was infested. He also had some thoughts about the double-headed python. The snake gall of the twin-headed python had the effect of enhancing a martial artist's qualifications, and although the effect was very weak and varied from person to person, it was still a treasure. If he was able to decapitate it, the snake gallbladder he could take and the snake heart was not needed. It was entirely possible to take on this quest and do it in passing. After all, that little girl was quite pitiful. Although Chu Mo could not be called kind-hearted, since he had seen it, there was no harm in helping out in passing without affecting himself moreover. For that ferocious beast egg that hadn't hatched in more than 10 years, Chu Mo was also a bit curious. Half an hour later, Chu Mo smoothly walked out of the city gates and arrived outside the base. Although the Luoyang base was only a small base, there was also a martial Dao Grand Master in attendance, plus there were many hunter-killer squads within the base, so the range of 20 miles near the base was a relatively safe area. If you wanted to hunt more powerful beasts, you could only go to places farther away. Chu Mo went to the wilderness this time in order to break his limits and be promoted to a martial artist. Therefore, his goal was the Great Shu Mountain, which was 100 miles away. 100 years ago, the Great Shu Mountain was merely a small hill within the Luoyang precincts. But then the world changed drastically, the Blue Star expanded hundreds of times, and the Great Shu Mountain became a large mountain range that stretched for thousands of miles. The mountains and the ancient trees in the sky, ferocious beasts rampant. Extremely terrifying. It is said that deep within the mountain range, there are also level 3 ferocious beasts that are comparable to martial masters, as well as level 4 ferocious beasts that are comparable to martial grandmasters. And I've even heard that there are traces of ferocious beasts that are even above the level 4 level, but it hasn't been verified. Chu Mo thought like this while rushing along. Level 3 and level 4 fierce beasts were extremely terrifying, and even if Chu Mo encountered one, there was absolutely no chance that he would be spared. That was why this time, when he went to the Great Shu Mountain, he merely wanted to kill some grade 2 ferocious beasts in the periphery as a way to hone himself. If he could encounter the twin-headed python, that would naturally be even better. Thinking like this. Whoosh! Suddenly, a air-breaking sound resounded steeply, and immediately, a black shadow bombarded towards Chu Mo. Second-grade ferocious beast. Hearing the air-breaking whistling sound of the sneak attack, Chu Mo subconsciously tightened his spirit and quickly analyzed that it was the aura of a grade 2 ferocious beast. Drawing out his battle sword. When he sensed that the ferocious beast had already approached his body, he abruptly activated his wind attribute talent and martial art Luo smoke steps, and with a flash of his body, he turned into smoke and drifted away. When he reappeared, he had already arrived at the side of the ferocious beast. Stab. Raising his sword and swinging it, the sword accurately slashed at the vicious beast's neck. Only a tearing sound could be heard as the knife entered the flesh, and a stream of blood flew up. The sneak-attacking beast didn't even have time to make any noise, and was directly split in two, falling to the ground. Only at this point did Chu Mo see what this ferocious beast actually was. Second grade inferior ferocious beast, Iron Thread Mantis. The Iron Thread Mantis was considered to be the weakest grade 2 ferocious beast. But that didn't mean that it was weak. The Iron Thread Mantis, named after the iron threadworm parasites. After the recovery of the aura, the symbiotic fusion of the two, so that the Iron Thread Mantis has the ability to devour gold and iron, and even fear of water and fire, especially a pair of sharp claws on the front limbs, but also can open the monument to crack the stone. The power is infinite. The key is the front limbs on the venom, once caught, not dead, also to be seriously injured. Therefore, don't look at the wire mantis in the second level of beasts belongs to the weakest, but every year died in its hands of martial artists, also no longer less said in short. In the wild, any ferocious beast should not be underestimated. Collect the fierce beast blood. Chu Mo squatted down, picked open the mantis heart, and dripped the heart blood into the bottle. He then removed the two forelimbs of the Iron Thread Mantis. This was the most valuable fierce beast material on the Iron Thread Mantis, and when he returned to the base, he could also sell a lot of yuan stones. After doing all this, Chu Mo continued to move forward. On the way, Chu Mo encountered some more ferocious beasts one after another. Some of them were killed by him in passing. There were also some very powerful third-level ferocious beasts that Chu Mo knew he couldn't reach, so he relied on his wind attribute talent to avoid them from afar. In a short distance of 100 miles, Chu Mo had encountered no less than 4 irresistible fierce beasts. This also made him deeply understand how dangerous the wilderness was. No wonder when martial artists go out to hunt ferocious beasts, they do so in groups. It's really because the wilderness is so dangerous that it's easy for a single person traveling alone to fall under the attack of a ferocious beast. Chu Mo secretly thought. 2 hours later, Chu Mo finally arrived at the outskirts of the Great Shu Mountain. After arriving here, the number of ferocious beasts had steeply increased by a large amount, and the danger had greatly increased. Chu Mo's actions also became more cautious. Although he had a wind attribute talent and Luo Yan steps, which made his speed even more terrifying than ordinary martial artists. However, there was a sky beyond the sky, and there were people beyond the people. If he accidentally incurred a more powerful beast, even he did not have full certainty that he could escape. Since we have already arrived at the Great Shu Mountain, we can come down to kill and cultivate without fear. Strive to step into the martial realm in the shortest possible time. At the same time cultivate both my stance and sword techniques to great completion. After setting his goal, Chu Mo began to look for targets of ferocious beasts to kill in the outskirts of the Great Shu Mountain. There were a large number of ferocious beasts here. It didn't take long for Chu Mo to come across a proper ferocious beast. A wolf that was 3 meters in size, with dark green fur all over its body, with flowing hair and fierce teeth that flashed with a cold light. Second grade inferior ferocious beast, wind-chasing wolf. Chu Mo's eyes revealed a look of gravity. Although it belonged to the same class 2 inferior grade fierce beast as the Iron Thread Mantis, the combat power of the two was incomparable. At this moment, this wind-chasing wolf had also smelled Chu Mo's scent and immediately howled, then hissed and charged up. Ow! The wind-chasing wolf darted on all 4 hooves. Its speed was as swift as lightning, and like a sharp sword, it lunged towards Chu Mo. Luo Yan steps. Chu Mo used his stance and activated his wind attribute talent at the same time, and his entire body swiftly drifted and flew to several meters away. Immediately, he used his air-breaking knife, which was haunted by a layer of cold light, reflecting a blinding light, and chopped towards the wind-chasing wolf's head. Bang! The battle knife wrapped with unstoppable power fell, but that wind-chasing wolf's speed was also extremely fast, and a claw slapped over. The moment the two collided, Chu Mo's body fell back a few steps, while the wind-chasing wolf's entire body flew out backwards. It fell to the ground and immediately stood up, hissing in a low voice. However, Chu Mo keenly realized that the claw that had previously made contact with his battle sword was constantly trembling. It was even vaguely oozing some blood. It broke the defense. It's not as powerful as me. Seeing this, Chu Mo's heart was greatly stabilized. Although he was only a martial apprentice with only 9,900 pounds of strength in his physical body, under the enhancement of his inferior thunder attribute talent, his strength was comparable to 50,000 pounds. In terms of strength, it was enough to crush the wind-chasing wolf. Kill. Chu Mo's confidence increased greatly, then he once again executed his body technique and killed towards the wind-chasing wolf with incredible speed. Clang! 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 In the blink of an eye, one person and one wolf had already exchanged more than 10 times. A moment later, the wind-chasing wolf resisted one after another. Finally his breath weakened, and was found an opportunity by Chu Mo to directly drop a knife, and a hideous head flew up. Wind-chasing wolf, dead. Chapter 17 Twin Cities Examination. Qin Shiwei steps into the martial realm. As time passed, night gradually descended. In the wild, there were many crises. Especially at night, many powerful and dangerous ferocious beasts would be active. Experienced martial artists would prepare hidden places to hide in advance. On a big tree that was about 10 feet thick, Chu Mo chiseled out a tree hole with his knife and spread a thick layer of leaves as a shelter. Sitting in the tree hole, Chu Mo began to calculate the day's harvest. Although there were many ferocious beasts and many crises in the Great Shu Mountain, however, he had already practiced the first layer of his air-breaking blade, and was able to cover the blade with a layer of blade awnings, making it much more powerful. And if he encountered a speedy beast, he could also rely on his wind attribute talent and Luo Yan step stance to tangle with it. Therefore, the day had been quite rewarding. There were 8 level 2 fierce beasts killed. Obtained 10 copies of grade 2 fierce beast blood. In addition, there were some precious grade 2 fierce beast materials. Altogether, it was worth at least thousands of yuan stones. For ordinary people, this was almost a fortune they could only earn in decades. But for martial artists, it only took one day. This was the gap. Packing up all the materials in separate categories, Chu Mo took out a bottle of ferocious beast blood and drank it in one gulp. Berserk energy abused in his body. Without hesitation, Chu Mo executed the 21st style body forging technique and slowly absorbed it. Although his strength had already reached the limit of a martial apprentice, he would not be able to grow unless he broke his shackles. Still, Chu Mo didn't give up and was still polishing his cultivation bit by bit, and for the next period of time. Chu Mo then fought with ferocious beasts during the day to hone his martial skills, and at night, he drank the blood of ferocious beasts to improve his strength. Although his strength hadn't been raised, but as he kept drinking the ferocious beast blood, Chu Mo realized that his physique was gradually strengthening, and his tapping of his talent was becoming more and more exquisite. Hunt, cultivate, hunt again. Day after day. Chu Mo's blade technique and body technique were improving by leaps and bounds. And just as Chu Mo was immersed in cultivation, at the same time, at the Luoyang Base's first academy, the entire school's students had already gathered in preparation for this year's school-wide roundup hunt. The academy square was already filled with densely packed students. Right in front, an old man stood on a high platform. Although he looked old, his figure stood straight, and his body was permeated with a majestic aura, like a javelin that wanted to pierce the sky. This person was the dean of the Luoyang Base First Martial Arts Academy. At the same time, he was also one of the 5 pillars of the base, and his cultivation had reached the Martial Dao Grand Master realm, Shinjin. Students, this academy roundup competition will be different from previous years. This year, my Luoyang Base will be joining forces with Chongfeng Base for a dual city trial. In other words, Dean Shinjin said in a deep voice, "This time, the roundup trial will not only include students from our first academy, but likewise other academies and martial arts centers within the base, as well as all the martial arts academy students from Changfeng base." What? The Twin Cities trial? All the academies and martial arts hall academies in both bases will participate. This trial is huge. Hearing Shinjin's words, all the trainees present paled. Both Luoyang base and Changfeng base belonged to small bases. Because of their proximity, there had been occasional joint trials in previous years. Usually, the final rewards of such trials would be richer, but accordingly, the danger would also increase greatly. For a time, many people were a little apprehensive in their hearts. On the stage, Shinjin took in the faces of all the students and said aloud, "I know what you guys are worried about. Just as you all thought, this trial examination has chosen the address on the outskirts of the Great Shu Mountain, and there is no need for me to say more about how dangerous it is for you all to understand. Therefore, for this time's examination, students are allowed to form teams freely, and at the same time, students are also allowed to give up the examination. Of course, alongside the danger is the chance. For this examination, the two major bases have come up with generous rewards, and the top 10 teams or individuals are likely to receive rewards that include and are not limited to storage bags, martial arts techniques, ferocious beast blood, and yuan stones." At this moment, all the students changed their faces. Although they had anticipated that this examination would be very dangerous, how could they not have expected that it would actually be on the outskirts of the Great Shushan Mountain? There were quite a few level 3 and even level 4 ferocious beasts infesting there. For a while many trainees who thought that their strength was low were discouraged, while there were also some trainees who were eager to try. Among them, especially the handful of 20 or so people who stood at the forefront of all the students. They were the Luoyang First Martial Arts Academy, elite class trainees. There were only 23 of them, but each and every one of them could be called the pride of the Luoyang base. In the elite class queue, Chen Shiwei looked at the crowd and saw that there was no figure of Chu Mo, and couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. This assessment trial was too dangerous. She herself was still unable to take care of herself, and Chu Mo didn't have cultivation in his body, so if he were to participate, it would be easy for accidents to occur. Now that she saw that the other party didn't sign up for the test, She was slightly relieved, and at the same time, she couldn't help but sigh slightly in her heart. Who doesn't want someone close to them to be a genius? 3 days ago I successfully stepped into the martial artist realm, and my strength has risen greatly. For this trial I will definitely take the top 10, and at the same time I will kill the two-headed python. Only then will I be able to give Chu Mo a chance to change his talent in exchange. Feeling the majestic and powerful qi and blood power within her body, Chen Shiwei could not help but secretly clench her fists. Xiaowei, why don't you team up with us? At this moment, a young man with a long sword on his back and a dashing demeanor came in front of Chen Shiwei, revealing a gentle smile as he said softly as he looked at Chen Shiwei, a touch of adoration unabashedly showed in his eyes. Huakun, the genius of the elite class of the First Martial Arts Academy. At the age of 19, he was already at the early stage of martial artist strength. It was said that not only did he have a medium cultivation talent, he had even awakened a medium sword talent. In terms of killing power and talent, in the entire Luoyang base, they are all tops. Coupled with Guokun's good looks, he has a high popularity within the academy. It was just that what broke many people's hearts was Guokun. In addition to cultivation, outsiders do not pretend to color, only to Chen Shiwei heart adoration. And now Guokun came to invite Chen Shiwei to form a team, naturally attracting even more attention from many people. Just feeling the attention of many people around, looking at Guokun's hot gaze, Chen Shiwei frowned without trace. I appreciate the good intentions, but I don't intend to form a team. Chen Shiwei shook her head and said. Chen Shiwei actually refused? Guokun personally invited, and she actually refused? Oh my god. Seeing Chen Shiwei refuse, many of the trainees were stunned. In reality, Many people within the academy were quite optimistic about the pairing of Qin Shiwei and Gui Kun. After all, both of them were dusty-looking and both had unrivaled talent, so they would inevitably climb up the realm together in the future. But who knows, Qin Shiwei is just sticking to her wasteful fiancé, and doesn't show color to outsiders. Even Gui Kun, she will not give half a point of superfluous communication. This also made quite a few people quite regretful. Alright then, in that case, you must remember to be more careful. Gui Kun's face revealed a look of disappointment, but he didn't dwell on it much. Instead, he barked a word and returned to his team. It's almost time, everyone get on the buses in order and leave in 5 minutes. Accompanied by Dean Shinjin's speech, the entire school's students then boarded the Yuanshi-powered vehicle. The car then started and headed towards the wilderness. Chapter 18, Advancing to Martial Artist. Rejected? In the car, a young martial artist sitting beside Gui Kun said with a smile. Gui Kun nodded and said. It doesn't matter, it's been rejected many times anyway, just keep up the good work. That martial artist was also from the elite class. At this moment, he patted Gui Kun's shoulder and comforted him. Gui Kun nodded approvingly and said seriously, this time, in the Twin Cities examination, I will strive to win the top 3 or even the first place. Let Qin Shiwei know that I am qualified to stand shoulder to shoulder with her. As he said this, his face was resolute. The caravan traveled through the wilderness. Along the way, there were occasional encounters with some ferocious beasts wringing their eyes, but the vast majority of them revealed fear at the sight of such a large convoy and retreated silently. After all, in this era, although humans had retreated from the position of the chief of all spirits, they were by no means a soft touch. Human martial artists, likewise, possessed extraordinary strength. The killings over the past 100 years had allowed many ferocious beasts to deeply understand the bloodthirsty and ferocious nature of humans. Of course, there were also some ferocious beasts that still wanted to charge up. However, the caravan was followed by strong men sent by the academy and the base, and there were many martial artists among them under their escort. These ferocious beasts were quickly scared back. Those that didn't retreat were basically dead. At noon, the caravan was finally at the outskirts of the Great Shu Mountain. And when they arrived, the participants sent by Changfeng Base all arrived one after another. It was worth mentioning. Among the cadets sent out by Changfeng Base, the leader, a teenager who looked to be about 18 or 19 years old, as soon as he arrived, he looked around the entire field with a condescending face, and then disdainfully skimmed his lips and said, Luoyang Base is really getting more and more unoccupied, there isn't even a single one who can fight. This remark came out. It immediately made the Luoyang Base's trainees look sideways. What are you talking about? To even mouth such a rant, you really don't know what you're talking about. Are you looking for a fight? To actually dare to underestimate us, when the trial begins, I'll let you know what it means for trouble to come out of your mouth. The martial artists from the Luoyang Base said with righteous indignation. However, their words were met with snickers from the Changfeng Base trainees. Save it, just you people still want to defeat Su Guang? How ridiculous. Su Guang is the strongest heavenly pride of our Changfeng Base, possessing a higher blade talent. He's already in the middle stage of martial arts now, and has great hopes of stepping into the realm of a grand master in the future, and I've heard that the strongest of you guys is only a martial artist possessing a medium sword talent, so what are you going to do to fight with us, Su Guang? What a laugh, I'm afraid that when we get to the field, you won't even be able to catch a single sword from our Su Guang. Ha 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 ha. The students from Changfeng Base were arrogant. And hearing this, all the Luoyang Base martial artists clenched their fists and were filled with anger. But at the same time, the hearts were filled with horror. High-level sword talent. This was indeed called a true heavenly pride. Their Luoyang Base was full of people, and they couldn't find a single person in the younger generation who possessed a high level of cultivation talent. Therefore, although they were angry, they knew that they were no match for Changfeng Base, so they could only forcefully swallow this breath seeing this scene. The arrogant teenager from Changfeng Base, named Su Guang, snorted disdainfully, just a bunch of ants. I'll take the first place in this Twin Cities examination. It didn't take long. The half-month Twin Cities examination trial had officially begun. After reading out the rules and rewards, the teacher gave an order: the examination officially begins. The words fell. All the trainees then entered the mountain forest separately. Xiaowei, let's the two of us go in as a pair. A petite girl came to Qin Shiwei and invited. Qin Shiwei thought about it and nodded. The two of them then entered the dense forest together and soon disappeared from sight. The matter of the Twin Cities examination was not known to Chu Mo. During this period of time, Chu Mo had been immersed in cultivation. Constantly killing and constantly cultivating. The results were also very pleasing. His sky-breaking blade and Luo smoke steps had been cultivated to the second layer of the realm during the killings, and both his strength and agility of his stance had changed drastically from before. Although the power still appeared to be the same. But today's Chu Mo could completely kill his previous self in seconds. This was growth. In the middle of the tree cave, Chu Mo slowly finished a set of body-forging techniques, compressing and recompressing the Yuan Qi energy that he had absorbed in, and only when this Yuan Qi was completely integrated into his physical body did he let out a long breath. He had planned to go out and kill ferocious beasts to obtain ferocious beast blood as usual, but who knew? Boom! It was at this moment. His body suddenly shook, his sweaty hairs exploded, and a burst of tiger and leopard thunder sounds were emitted from his muscles and bones. It resounded continuously, one after another. Sweat hairs explode. Tiger and leopard thunder sound. Could this be? Chu Mo's face changed, and without time to think carefully, he hurriedly drank a mouthful of second-grade ferocious beast blood once again, and then directly performed the body-forging method. Over and over again. Chu Mo didn't know how many times he had performed the body-forging technique, nor did he know what the passage of time was really like. When he woke up, he realized that a layer of black mud and dirt lingered on his body, emitting a fishy smell. And within the body, it was even more powerful as it surged out, flowing through his limbs and bones. He could feel that some sort of shackles within his body had been invisibly broken. Ease of scripture and marrow cleansing. Tiger leopard thunder sound. Indeed, I have been promoted to the martial realm. Clenching his fists and feeling the majestic qi and blood power, a smile appeared on Chu Mo's face. This time when he went out and came here, it was originally for the purpose of advancing to the martial artist realm. And now that the goal had been accomplished, it was considered complete. There was a pond not far away. Chu Mo scanned around and realized that there were no ferocious beasts ambushing him before jumping into the pond. The pond water was cool, constantly flushing the pores and cleaning the dirt. After taking a bath, Chu Mo took a nap. The next morning, rising up in high spirits, Chu Mo brought his battle sword and searched for ferocious beasts to kill. After being promoted to martial artist, his strength had grown completely. The first thing was that the strength of the physical body broke through the limit of 10,000 pounds. Secondly, the speed of absorbing Yuan Qi, the body's recovery ability, and the 5 senses had all been enhanced. Even the talent enchantment had grown a bit. After breaking through the 10,000 gene strength, having the power of the lightning attribute added to it makes me strong enough to fight against mid-stage martial artists with my physical strength alone. But there are still some gaps with late-stage martial artists. But these gaps can be completely made up for with the wind attribute talent speed boost. And that means tier. Chu Mo chopped this grade 2 medium ferocious beast in front of him into two with a single slash, and stood in place, his gaze as electric as he murmured, "I'm no longer afraid of Zhou Cheng. It seems that it's also time to return to the base." Just in time. After cultivating to the martial artist realm, the original body forging method could no longer keep up with the cultivation progress, and needed to be replaced with a more advanced body forging method. This would also need to be purchased from the big stores in the base. Thinking like this, after collecting the materials and blood of this ferocious beast, Chu Mo intended to leave. Only Before leaving this place, Chu Mo still had one more thing he needed to do. Chapter 19, Killing the Two-Headed Python. Inside the hidden valley. Ancient trees were in the sky, the canopy was tall, and light spilled down through the leaves, reflecting dappled and dim. Chu Mo held his battle sword and looked around vigilantly. Suddenly, his expression moved, as if he had smelled something, and he couldn't help but stand still. And his gaze even looked somewhere ahead. On a thick tree, in the thick canopy, two large heads poked out from it, for ghostly cold eyes staring at him, emanating a morose coldness. And after the heads, there was a body up to a meter thick, wrapped around the trunk at a rough calculation, it was at least 30 meters long. It was clearly a python. And it was a python with two heads. A two-headed python. However, this python in front of him was seen to be greenish-green in color, with an eerie luster emanating from its skin, giving off an indestructible feeling. Such an aura is clearly already in the ranks of a grade 2 upper-class ferocious beast. A flash of gravity appeared in Chu Mo's eyes. An upper grade 2 ferocious beast was comparable to a late-stage human martial artist. The two-headed python could be said to be one of the most difficult ferocious beasts. Not only was its body hard, it was difficult to be injured by swords and knives, but it was also highly poisonous, so it could be said that the person who was hit would die. Even a few late-stage martial artists of the same level would find it difficult to fight against it. At this moment this double-headed python was looking down at Chu Mo, and there was a coldness in its cold eyes. For it, anyone who dared to intrude into its territory would become its prey. As for Chu Mo, he was also looking at the two-headed python in front of him at the moment, and his body's chi and blood were all mobilized. The double-headed python wanted to swallow him. And he also wanted to decapitate the double-headed python in order to get the snake's gall and heart. Hiss. Suddenly, the two-headed python hissed and then steeply moved. One of its heads lunged down in the air, opening its bloody mouth in mid-air, seemingly wanting to directly swallow Chu Mo alive. A fishy wind came to the face, mixed with a poisonous mist that made people dizzy from smelling it, and it was straight to make people sick to their stomachs. What a fast speed! Chu Mo was startled in his heart. This two-headed python didn't look huge, but its speed was extremely swift. When the head smashed down, it almost surpassed the speed of sound, so much so that it brought up a sonic boom crackling in mid-air. Chu Mo immediately operated his talent. Luo Yan's step was also launched, his body drifted backward, and swiftly retreated a distance of more than 10 meters, dodging this strike of the two-headed python. But just at this moment, its other head also steeply smashed over, rapped with air-breaking whistling sound, as if a huge stone, such as the waves beat the shore like a bombardment down. Its force was terrifying. Even the air made a whistling sound. There was no doubt. If one were to be smashed by such a head, they would inevitably be slapped into pieces in the first instant. And in front of such power and speed, another senior late-stage martial artist wouldn't dare to resist it and could only desperately dodge. However, just in this instant Chu Mo's body slightly crouched down, his battle sword pointing diagonally at the ground. At this moment, he eyed the two-headed python's head that was about to fall. His eyes were like electricity, and his slightly crouching body jumped up like a spring, his body transformed into a black light, and he sped towards the Wolf King. Clang! A faint sound of a sword suddenly resounded in the silent jungle. However, a flash of faintly bright blade light appeared on top of the battle knife, followed by a flash of cold aura, wrapped in unstoppable force, and chopped towards the python's head. Bronze-grade martial skill, air-breaking blade. Pfft. This blade was too stunning, so much so that Chu Mo clearly struck afterward, but there was quite a sense of being the first to strike after. Along with the fall of the long knife, at the neck of the python head, a touch of brilliant red blossomed, and then dipped away, as if it was a plum blossom in full bloom. The next moment the plum blossoms burst, blooming like fireworks, and this head of the two-headed python exploded, sliding down from the neck and falling into the grass. Hiss, hiss, hiss. One of the two-headed python's head was chopped off raw by this blade. Such a major trauma caused it to let out a mournful hiss. At the same time, its eyes also glowed with a touch of crimson, clearly having reached the point of madness. As expected, this remaining head of the two-headed python angled up and sprayed out a mouthful of dense green liquid towards Chu Mo. This was the venom of the two-headed python. Seeing this, Chu Mo hurriedly performed Luo Yan's steps to dodge away. Zila la. The venom landed on an open space, and the terrifying toxin immediately corroded a large area with a crater. This poison is truly terrifying. Chu Mo was secretly shocked, and then he didn't dare to be slow, performing Luo Yan's steps to the extreme, instantly arriving in front of the two-headed python, taking advantage of the fact that the other party had just spewed out venom and hadn't yet taken a breather. He continuously swung his battle knife in his hand along with the fall of his long blade. On the body of the twin-headed python, wound after wound deep enough to be seen on the bone appeared. The intense pain caused the two-headed python's huge body to twist up in the middle of the jungle, and the tremendous force destroyed countless trees. Within 100 feet in a radius, it was all a mess. However, Chu Mo relied on his speed talent and continuously dodged back and forth, not receiving any damage at all. A moment later, Chu Mo sensed that the breath of the two-headed python was starting to fall, and immediately understood that it was starting to lose some of its support. Sure enough, Zila. Spitting out a mouthful of venom once again, the two-headed python directly hissed, then turned its head, intending to escape. Wanna escape? Seeing this scene, Chu Mo directly chased after him. The chi and blood in his body was run to the extreme, and a layer of dazzling cold light was attached to his battle sword, tilting it to chop down. A blade chopped out. The dazzling blade light tore through the void and landed heavily on the only remaining head of the two-headed python. Plop! A dull sound spread out. The hideous python's head shot up into the sky, bringing up a large strand of blood to fly, and then sprinkled down like a downpour. That huge head even smashed heavily onto the ground. Until he died. There was still a touch of fear and bewilderment in his eyes. It seemed that he had not even expected that he would die here. Looking at the huge python body, Chu Mo wiped the sweat from his forehead and let out a long breath. This time, fighting with the two-headed python seemed to be a short period of time, but in reality, it had consumed a lot of his chi and blood. If he hadn't just been promoted to martial artist, I'm afraid that he wouldn't have been able to take it down so easily. However, no matter what, he still won. Now, it's time to reap the rewards. Chu Mo smiled faintly and walked over to the corpse of the two-headed python, first digging out both the snake's gallbladder and heart, and putting them into a pre-prepared bottle for preservation. Other than that, Chu Mo also removed the venom sac. The venom of the two-headed python could be considered extremely poisonous. Even if a martial artist was dipped into it, he would surely die, and it was considered to be the most valuable material on this python. Taking it back to the base could also sell a lot of money. After doing all this, Chu Mo packed up and prepared to leave the Great Shu Mountain. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, Chu Mo suddenly looked puzzled and raised his head, his eyes looking into the distance, vaguely hearing some movement. What is that sound? Chapter 20, High and Mighty. At that time, difference between clouds and clay. At this moment, in the middle of the dense forest, a petite girl was running for her life. And behind her, there were several wind-chasing wolves in pursuit. It's all my fault, it's all my fault. If it wasn't for me, they wouldn't have died. Du Jing ran desperately, recalling the events of a short while ago. A flash of remorse flooded her eyes. Originally, she had partnered up with Chen Shiwei and hunted second-grade ferocious beasts in the outskirts of the Great Shu Mountain. However, they accidentally discovered dozens of wind spirit grass. This was a kind of spiritual grass that grew after the great change in the heavens and earth, capable of producing a kind of fruit called the wind spirit fruit, which, if eaten, could increase a martial artist's perception of the wind attribute talent. She possessed a weak wind attribute talent, so she wanted to pick it to enhance her talent. As a result, she accidentally encountered a trainee from the Long Wind base. The other party wanted to make a move to snatch it, and Du Jing naturally refused, so the two parties fought. At the time of the battle, the cadets from Luoyang Base and Changfeng Base continued to converge, causing the battle to escalate. In the end, even Guo Kun from Luoyang Base and Su Guang from Changfeng Base joined in, turning it into a big melee. Because the commotion was too great, it eventually attracted the attention of the Wind Spirit Grass's guardian beasts, a large group of wind-chasing wolves. Although these martial artists were all elites, only a few dozen of them were martial artists. The rest were merely martial apprentices faced with dozens of Grade 2 ferocious beast wind-chasing wolves, and even a wind-chasing wolf king that had already half-stepped into Grade 3, they were naturally no match. With such a large gap in strength, they were quickly surrounded and killed by the wolves. Until she escaped, more than a dozen of Luoyang Base's martial artists alone had already died. And herself was also about to follow in the footsteps of the latter and be buried under the belly of the wolves. Feeling the gradually emptying power in her body, Du Jing became more and more desperate. She didn't want to die yet. But she was about to die. Just at this moment. Ahead. On a thick tree, a figure suddenly rushed out towards her. This figure, Du Jing looked somewhat familiar. It's Chu Mo? Why is he here? Du Jing's eyes widened in some disbelief. As one of Chen Shiwei's few close friends, Du Jing naturally knew Chen Shiwei's fiancé, Chu Mo, and had met him a few times before even. She had even persuaded Chen Shiwei to leave from Chu Mo's side as early as possible. After all, in her thoughts, these two people were simply not from the same world. Didn't Chu Mo not participate in this trial? Why is he here? This thought surfaced in Du Jing's mind. The next moment. She then saw Chu Mo holding a battle sword, crossing over her like lightning and charging towards the several wind-chasing wolves behind her. Chu Mo, are you crazy? That's a Grade 2 ferocious beast. Du Jing subconsciously opened her mouth and shouted. However, before she could finish her words, they came to an abrupt end. Her pupils even contracted dramatically. Under her gaze. Only with a wave of the long sword in Chu Mo's hand, a raging wind-chasing wolf was chopped into two. At the same time, the other two wind-chasing wolves had also pounced over. However, Chu Mo's figure flashed and swiftly drifted to several meters away, and then waved his long knife, only to see a flash of cold aura, accompanied by two dull plopping sounds. Successively two hideous wolf heads then rose up into the sky. The corpses even fell to the ground, never moving again. Du Jing's eyes went straight. The entire person froze in place, her mind going blank. The 3 level 2 wind-chasing wolves that had chased her to the end of her rope were just died? How was this possible? And wasn't Chu Mo just an ordinary person who couldn't cultivate? Why could he have such a powerful strength? To kill a second-level inferior wind-chasing wolf with a single slash, and to do so with such ease, this represented that Chu Mo's strength had at the very least reached the point of a mid-martial artist. Even both had already reached the late stage of martial artist might also be possible. When did he become so powerful? Or was he actually hiding his strength all along? After killing the 3 wind-chasing wolves, Chu Mo began to collect the ferocious beast blood. A moment later turned around. He only saw that this trainee from the elite class was still frozen in place with an out-of-body look. Chu Mo could not help but frown. This was a cadet from the elite class? Being in the wilderness, surrounded by ferocious beasts, but still dared to freeze in place, isn't it looking for death? Du Jing didn't know that her evaluation in Chu Mo's heart had been lowered quite a bit. Only at this time, when she noticed Chu Mo's gaze, did she come back to her senses. Chu Mo. Thank you for saving me. She looked at Chu Mo with complicated eyes, with gratitude in her heart, and more than that, shock. After this scene in front of her, only then did Du Jing realize that Chu Mo wasn't an ordinary person who couldn't cultivate. Instead, his strength was still very strong. Although she didn't know why Chu Mo was hiding his strength, Du Jing was smart enough not to ask. She knew deep down. Everyone had their own secrets. If one wanted to live a long life, it was best not to be too curious. No need to be so polite, Chu Mo said in a faint voice. He was quite satisfied in his heart that Du Jing did not ask about anything else. Then he curiously said, "By the way, how did you come here?" Du Jing then roughly explained. And speaking of this, Du Jing finally recalled what had happened previously, and a look of anxiety appeared on her face. Right, at that time, when we were in a melee with the Changfeng base's martial practitioners, Gua Kun and Chen Shiwei were both injured by Su Guang, and later on, when we encountered the wolves, because of the crisis of the situation, when I fled, I got separated from Chen Shiwei, and I don't know what happened to her now. What? Hearing this, the pupils of Chu Mo's eyes shrank. He did not expect that Chen Shiwei had actually been injured. Moreover, he had encountered the wind-chasing wolves, so he was afraid that it would not be easy to escape out. No, I have to go and take a look. Thinking like this, Chu Mo didn't dare to stay longer, and after speaking a few more words with Du Jing and asking for directions, he cast his wind attribute talent, and his figure quickly left behind. Du Jing looked at Chu Mo's departing direction, a complex color appearing in her eyes previously. Chu Mo's academic performance was good, his character was also gentle, and his temperament and looks were also top-notch. When Du Jing was in the beginning of her love affair, she also had a love for him. It was only later, when she detected that she possessed good martial arts talent while Chu Mo was just an ordinary person who couldn't cultivate, that she gradually pulled away from him and pinched off that adoration in her heart. We are people of two worlds. At that time, she told herself this in her heart. Nowadays, Du Jing gave a bitter smile. They were, still, people of two worlds. Only it was different from before. At that time, she was high above the world, boasting of her extraordinary destiny, looking at Chu Mo as if overlooking a mole cricket. At this moment, she had fallen into the dust, and Chu Mo was like the wind and moon in the sky, pure and clean. She can only be looked up to, and even difficult to look up to. It was like the difference between clouds and mud. Just. She sighed, cutting off the last unrealistic fantasy in her heart. Shaking her head, Du Jing turned towards the exit. Being injured and suffering such a crisis had already made her lose the courage to continue the trial. She could only choose to withdraw.